Hello and welcome to And the Runner-Up Is. This week on the show, we're talking the 2011 Best Actress race at the Academy Awards, where Meryl Streep won for her performance in The Iron Lady. But why did she beat fellow nominees Glenn Close, Viola Davis, Rooney Mara, and Michelle Williams? We'll explore all this and more today on And the Runner-Up Is. Hello and welcome back to And the Runner-Up Is. I'm your host Kevin Jacobson, here to talk about the 84th year of Best Actress at the Oscars, which covered the films of 2011. We'll be discussing how Meryl Streep won, why the losers lost, and who we think was the runner-up of this Best Actress race. And my guest today, I am so excited to have back on. You know him from the 1958 episode where we discussed Susan Hayward's win for I Want to Live! And that lineup full of stars. Now here he is again talking about another lineup full of great stars here. Welcome back, Baby Clyde.
Hi, happy to be here. Thanks for having me back.
Of course, we're in the 21st century. Look at us.
It's most unlike me to do anything in the 21st century. I'm always asked to do the 30s or the 50s or something. So here we are in the 21st century. Although I did ask to do this, didn't I, for very specific reasons.
You did. You have your opinions on this race, so I'm excited to get into those. Not always the most popular opinions. We shall see. But before we talk 2011, let's just get into Best Actress as a category. Last time you were here, you told me your favorite Best Actress wins of all time were Shirley Booth in Come Back Little Sheba and Geraldine Page in The Trip to Bountiful. Great, unique answer too. I don't hear people cite often enough when I ask this question.
That's because other people are wrong.
Or they just haven't seen them, you know?
Yeah, more likely.
Yeah, but now I'm curious, just to open it up for you, what is your favorite lineup in this category of all time?
Oh, I mean, there's so many: 37, 41, 67, 68, 2006, 2018, 1987, 1988.
Wow.
That's really sad, isn't it? That I can just reel them off like
that was incredible to witness, I must say. That was just like right off the top of your head.
I've been doing this a really long time.
Yeah,
I think people sometimes have different interpretations of what they mean by a great lineup.
Yeah.
And my interpretation isn't necessarily great performances, although that's important. But I think it's I think the films need to be kind of important films and important actresses. And these are big, weighty things that have been remembered, as opposed to bad lineups, which to me doesn't necessarily mean bad performances. It can sometimes just mean totally forgettable films, or the material is not worthy of the people that are nominated. Or often it's things like when a film is nominated but has no other nominations, a single nomination, hair and makeup or something is a bad lineup. I think we may be talking about one of those lineups today.
Maybe. maybe. Yeah.
So a great lineup for me is really heavyweight actresses doing some of their best, most iconic work. And when you look at that lineup, you could think, oh, any one of those could have won, and we wouldn't now be looking back and thinking what a terrible win. So in 1967, if it's Katharine Hepburn or Edith Evans or Audrey Hepburn or Anne Bancroft, any one of those, looking back now, we wouldn't be rolling our eyes at a terrible win, because they're all kind of people, top actresses in their prime. That's what I think makes a great lineup.
I love it. Yeah. And I would say we are just coming off one in 2010 that I just talked about last week, where I feel like the fifth place there could have been my winner in another year. So love that. Love when we get that. Well, my other question for you, you told me your most heartbreaking loss was Emmanuel Riva for Amour, which we'll be talking about next week, actually. But now I'll ask you your most heartbreaking snub, someone who wasn't even nominated in Best Actress.
That's hard because I'm such a kind of Oscar obsessive that once you don't get nominated, you kind of dead to me.
Out of sight, out of mind.
So I don't really.
Wow.
I'm not someone who has lists of people who should have been nominated and
Sure.
things like that. There are, and also I think often a snub to me isn't someone I love that didn't get nominated. To be properly snubbed, you have to be in the race in the first place. You have to be in the running.
Yeah.
If an obscure film that no one really saw, it's not a snub. It's just something that you think should have been nominated. I think what would have been a good nomination, it would have solved a lot of problems, is if Deborah Carr had been nominated for The Innocents in 1961, then she could have won. She would have been a perfectly deserving winner in 1961 for The Innocents, and then we would have capped off those 6 losing nominations with a win. So that would have been a great nomination and a great service done, to Oscar history if Deborah Carr could have had a win there. As we go through, I'm sure I'll think of others, but that's one to me that I always think, come on, guys.
Yeah. Well, I would also add that 2011 is a year where people often cite heartbreaking snubs compared to the lineup that we actually got. So we'll be curious to see if you have any of those when we maybe get to that in the questions.
I've come prepared.
Good. All right. Well, let's talk about this year at the Oscars, the 84th Academy Awards. The nominees were Glenn Close in Albert Nobbs, Viola Davis in The Help, Rooney Mara in The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, Meryl Streep in The Iron Lady, and Michelle Williams in My Week with Marilyn, with the winner being Meryl Streep. Wow, her 3rd Oscar. So before we break down these performances individually, what are your overall thoughts on this lineup we are left with here in 2011?
This is a bad lineup. I mean, it's just a bad lineup. It's great actresses. There is no bad actresses here. There's not even really any bad performances as such. There's bad films, there's bad material, and great actresses doing their best with what they've been given. But it's just a overall mediocre lineup, especially if you also consider what I was saying a moment ago. There is, literally some of the best actresses of all time in films that get like 1 or 2 nominations. These are not like films that are remembered. These are not films that people talk about. Other than The Help, which I think got like 10 nominations or something, did it?
They got like 4. So
did it get 4? Did I just make 10 up?
I don't know where you got 10 from.
I
think it just got the actors and picture. I think that was
really.
It.
I just assumed he had like I was just thinking I don't know, costumes and adapted screenplay, whatever. Okay, so that makes it even worse then, because in my head for some reason I thought the Help had got quite a few nominations, but this is exactly what I mean by a bad lineup. These are not. There's one Best Picture nominee in there, and that's because we have a 10. Was it 10? Because it up to
sliding scale, but there was 9.
So this is what I mean by a bad lineup. These are not memorable films. These are not films that people talk about now, other than to complain about, the Oscars, which we do a lot, of course.
Yes, we do, because we love them.
Yeah.
We're allowed
don't
to.
For the general public are really, really debating Albert Nobbs a lot, are they? I think like us Oscar nerds talk about it probably more than necessary, but I don't think the general public even remembered it at the time. Never mind, remember it now.
Yeah, I think if you talk to the average person on the street about Albert Nobbs, you'd be like, I don't know the man. Sorry.
Who's he? Yeah.
Is he running for something? Like what? Yeah. Anyway, this is definitely one of those lineups for me where I look at what could have been and I just kind of have to ask like what happened, because there was really a lot of potential, at least for me, for this to be a really good category. I think a lot of the people who were in the 6 to 10 range, I maybe would have preferred to most of this lineup, quite honestly, and we will definitely get to those that missed later on. But yeah, as a whole, love all these actresses. Obviously, having my fave, Glenn, back in the race is always fun, even if this maybe wasn't the best vehicle, in my opinion. Michelle Williams, she's in a place in her career where she's sort of finding her groove and becoming like a perennial nominee of sorts. Viola Davis really on the ascent and really launching into another level here with this performance. Very exciting. And then Rooney Mara getting this nomination after a rather rocky precursor run that I was, surprised to look back on and see like she only got a Golden Globe nomination before this. So, and for a movie that I actually really, really like compared to the rest of this lineup. And then we have Meryl, and this being one of her most divisive nominations, let alone winning for it, playing an iconic figure. It'll be fun to discuss how this finally happened for her after many, many, many attempts to get her a third Oscar. I do have to throw in, of course, that it's funny to me that Meryl was somehow seen as like the most overdue for this Oscar out of this group of women who hadn't won an Oscar before, let alone two. Like, I imagine Glenn felt a certain way about people being like, "Oh, Meryl, we have to get you your third Oscar," when she's just like, still waiting for my first.
Hi, remember me?
Yes, I'm also like in her age group too, and I haven't won anything. So, well, other awards, but just not that elusive Oscar. But yeah, I think unless you have anything else, we can get right into it.
Let's get right into it.
Okay, well, we're starting off right where we just left off there with Glenn Close in Albert Nobbs. So here we are with Glenn after a long time away from the Oscars, getting her sixth nomination, her first since Dangerous Liaisons back in 1988. So that's 23 years. So in between, she's keeping incredibly busy in all different kinds of media. On the stage, she's in the play Death and the Maiden and wins a Tony in 1992. She wins another Tony in 1995 for the musical Sunset Boulevard. In film, she's got things like Hamlet and The House of the Spirits and The Paper. And 1996 is a really big year where she has things like Mary Riley and Mars Attacks and 101 Dalmatians, playing Cruella de Vil, and really becoming a true icon, I think, in the eyes of many after that performance. Meanwhile, she wins an Emmy for the TV movie Serving in Silence, also in the 90s. So 90s, great time to be Glenn Close. Early 2000s aren't quite as exciting, but she appeared in a season of The Shield, got another Emmy nomination, but then she kind of reached another huge career peak in the late 2000s with Damages, where she starred as Patty Hughes for 5 seasons, an incredible performance, won 2 more Emmys, so that kind of kept her busy leading up to 2011 or so. But as Damages is happening, she's kind of getting the power to make her passion project, Albert Nobbs, and adapt it to the screen. It's based on a novel from 1927 that was adapted into a play called The Singular Life of Albert Nobbs, which Glenn actually starred in the 1982 off-Broadway production. So yeah, 1982, same year she had her debut film role in The World According to Garp. So that's how long this story has kind of been gestating for her. So eventually she recruited her frequent collaborator, Rodrigo Garcia, to direct. And so Albert Nobbs is set in the 19th century in Ireland, and Glenn plays Albert Nobbs, who was born female and has spent the last 3 decades living as a man, as a butler at a hotel in Dublin. And Albert has been able to pass as a man for 30 years, but things take a turn when he meets Hubert Page, played by Janet McTeer, who is also living as a man, and learns of Albert's secret one night. Meanwhile, Albert hopes to open a tobacco shop and wishes to take one of the hotel maids, Helen, played by Emilia Wasikowska, as his wife. But Helen is also having a romance with Joe, Aaron Taylor Johnson, or Aaron Johnson at this time. And Joe tries to get Helen to lead Albert on to get some of his money, basically. So yeah, this is an interesting one to start with for many reasons. Excited to be talking about another Glenn performance, obviously, but this is not maybe one of her more beloved roles. Tell me your thoughts on Glenn as an actress overall and this big passion project of hers.
I mean, Glenn's one of the greats. If it wasn't for Meryl, then she could be like the greatest of her generation, I think, generally perceived to be.
Yep.
She's a bit of an odd one because in the 80s, she had that run of Oscar nominations. They weren't necessarily big hits. She doesn't really become a star until Jagged Edge, maybe, and certainly Fatal Attraction. But that run is really quick. She gets like 5 in 7 years or something, and then not the one for 2023. It happens often, actually, when you look at you watch people you're fans of, and you watch their career go. There's often a break at a turn of a decade, and it very much feels like she was riding high at the end of the 80s, and by the early mid-90s, she was sort of supporting. She's supporting playing the president in All Aircraft One or something, isn't she? Which isn't what a leading lady should be doing. This happens a lot. Certainly, people of that age. She's always been more of a character actress than a sort of leading lady, I suppose. It was almost kind of an accident. She becomes that leading lady star. But she does what all great actors at that age do. If you're sensible, you go to the stage, bigger fish, smaller pond. You go to TV, which she was one of the very first to do that properly in a series. So people would often do TV as a guest star or as a TV movie or something, but she's actually the star of Damages, and it's a huge sensation for her. So she did all the right things. But at no point during that period do I ever remember there being discussion of an Oscar nomination. That just wasn't what she was doing, winning loads of awards, keeping her profile high. But there's no real talk of Oscars in that period. And I think for someone like me who follows this really closely, you thought her chances were up, and you thought that maybe years to come she'll get a supporting nomination and win. You know, that's kind of the trajectory you expect, don't you? So the fact this film comes around is a bit of a marvel. The fact that she gets momentum for it is kind of great. And I remember first reading about it being really excited. Oh, this is the one that could do it. This is the one that could do it. Then of course we all saw it.
Yeah.
It's a choice, I suppose, isn't it? It's like, it's not her fault as such. It's just bad casting. I mean, she did the casting, so I suppose it is her. But you can't get around the fact that she does not remotely convince as a man. She looks like a sort of small lesbian, you know, and she does, and it just doesn't convince at all. The makeup's good, but it looks really out of place with everyone else around her. She looks like a person with makeup on compared with everyone else around her, doesn't she? And the story, the sort of gender politics are dodgy. It's trying its best. It's really well-meaning, but has aged very poorly. It's not a bad film if it didn't have that central, unconvincing performance. And there's little things that are just wrong. Physically, it doesn't, convince. But there's things like, it's set in Ireland. Everyone around her is Irish. She has a sort of British, almost sort of Cockney accent. This is explained away, but it says she was brought up in Seven Dials, and Seven Dials is an area in Covent Garden, which would have been kind of like a market or something, around the time that she was supposed to be born there. But that would be fine if she had an actual British accent, but she doesn't. It's all over the place. I don't know where in Britain she's supposed to come from. It keeps dropping in and out, which is odd because we know she can do a British accent. And she actually, she was brought in to redub Andy McDowell, wasn't she, in the Charles and the Eight Man? So which is such a weird thing to do, to get an American actress with a bad accent to get another American actress to dub her. So it's not like she can't do one. So I don't know what she's doing, and it's specifically stands out because everyone around her is doing an Irish accent. I don't know why she couldn't have been Irish, which I'm sure she could have nailed. Yeah, it's just a really poor. It's not badly acted. It's just miscast and all kinds of wrong.
Yeah, this is a tough one for me because I love Glenn. Everyone knows I love Glenn, and I'm glad that she got to see this through after many years of fighting to get it made, which is not easy to do, especially as like a 60-year-old woman in Hollywood. There are very few actresses who could even pull something like this off. So kudos for that. I just find the end result to be very lacking, unfortunately. Like, I can be a stan and love her and still think that this was ultimately kind of a misfire. I think the film is just kind of poorly executed in terms of delivering its perspective. Like, not that every film has to have a message, obviously, but I think a film like this clearly has something it's trying to get across, and I just don't think it does that very successfully. Like,
well, what is it trying to get across? Because I really don't. I mean, know what it was aiming at, really.
I can sort of justify it as like, this is sort of about women struggling to adapt and survive and sort of thrive in a very patriarchal society where options for women are limited, and that sort of connects Albert and Hubert, and how often women, or in this case like people who were like born as biological women at least, went through a lot of pain and trauma during this time period, and it's like about finding support in each other. Like, but it just feels very surface level, I think, in its approach, and it just doesn't really go deep enough, and just not enough really happens to give us the emotional response that Glenn and company are kind of going for. And for her performance, I think it is a noble effort. It's obviously transformative, and she's doing some kind of accent that I personally wasn't able to place. But I think doing a solid enough job of passing as male, but like there's something either in the screenplay or her performance that just feels kind of distanced and like alienating about Albert. And I don't know if that's the intended effect, that there is just kind of like something alien feeling about Albert.
Well, it doesn't fit into his surroundings at all. I mean,
Yeah,
if Robert Nobbs actually worked at the hotel, people would be like, "Who on earth is that weirdo in the corner?" It's just it
sure.
doesn't feel like a real person, does it? It doesn't. It
No.
feels like when you have the Muppet movies where they have like one person surrounded by Muppets. It feels the other way around. It's like Muppets surrounded by people. The
Oh my
He
God.
it doesn't feel like a real person. It feels like a little lady in the corner with some facial makeup on. It also gets very, very muddled about its kind of like gender politics because
Very.
it does this weird thing where neither of the playing male characters are supposedly like trans, as we would say nowadays. They're both supposedly dressing like that because of traumas that have happened to in their past, and so we get this muddy thing where it's like, are they supposed to be like trans or are they just doing it for expediency? It's just very kind of muddled and kind of hedges its bets there. And it's nowadays, I suppose, 13 years ago, it wasn't so relevant. It wasn't something people were talking about in the same way. But nowadays, you're just kind of like not quite sure what you're going for there. That's not really a criticism because I think all this discussion has changed so quickly that
Yeah.
we're literally barely a decade ago, and everything has sort of been turned on its head as to how we think about these things. But looking at it now, you kind of immediately stand by the idea that this doesn't quite sit right.
Yeah, agreed. And he does Albert, I'm gonna just use he pronouns because that's kind of what the film does. But, you know, standing out within this world and people kind of indicate occasionally that he's a strange man at times, but I just don't really get insight into his feelings on a lot of things. Like he kind of
No.
fantasizes about this tobacco shop and living with Helen there, but seems like he doesn't really have like sexual desire at all at the same time, or even true like romantic feelings. And so I also find it kind of unclear, like you're saying, how he even feels about his gender expression because,
Yeah. No idea.
seems very comfortable as a man. But then there's like this scene where he goes off with Hubert on the beach wearing a dress and seems like, I'm liberated, I'm free,
Yeah.
I'm so excited, I'm running down the beach. So, like, how exactly does Albert wish to live his life if he had the freedom to do so? I don't really know, which I think is like not good. That I don't know.
Totally, totally. And if Albert is not trans and just doing this because it's suited him all these years, suited him all these years, then there's no reason why he could not now be living as female. If we're told it wasn't some sort of gender expression in the first place, it was purely to get away from the life he was living. There's no reason now we couldn't be a cook or else at the hotel. He's way, way away from where he brought up, way, way away from where terrible things happened to him. It's just very, very unclear, and muddled as to what the actual motivations are.
Yeah.
And the fact that both of them happen to meet up, and both of their reasoning seems muddled. It's just the whole thing just doesn't really work.
Yeah. And I think Glenn is fine in the role. And I think the thing that I key into is showing how a very repressed person who hasn't really lived would probably kind of interact with the world once he actually had the opportunity to like do something. But I don't know. Like I said, I'm just kind of uncomfortable with the way the film presents him as like an alien figure at times who like doesn't understand human interaction and also is kind of vaguely sexless and also in the end is someone clearly to be pitied
Yeah.
more than anything. So I guess I just really struggle so much with the intention behind the storyline. But what do we think of just the interactions with Janet McTeer?
We should say up front, this is a really good best supporting actress lineup. I think the best. I was trying to rank my supporting actresses, and I really can't. I keep changing my mind about them. Jenny McTeer is far more convincing than Glenn Close, and that's just a matter of physicality.
That's what I
Janet
felt on this
McTeer,
watch too. Yeah.
Janet McTeer is 6 foot tall, and it just
Yep.
really, really makes a difference. So yeah, she does a much, much better job than Glenn Close does. Having said that, I think most of that is just purely from a physical presence rather than necessarily the acting itself. Also, there's not the makeup. She's got a nose, hasn't she done? But like
Yeah.
other than that, she doesn't look sort of plastic faced like Glenn does. So maybe you can actually read her face, see her performance better than you can with Glenn's, which is at a distance because of the physical transformation.
Yeah, and just much more comfortable, I think, compared to Glenn, who does feel slightly self-conscious, I think, at times.
Yeah, and there's also when they're literally when they're stood together, Glenn Close is like looks over a foot shorter, and it just
Yeah.
makes the whole transformation less convincing, doesn't it? Because they literally one actually could potentially pass as the man, and the other one you're just thinking, oh no, this doesn't work at all. Whilst amongst the kitchen staff and that, it's not so obvious, but once you put Janet Matea next to her, it really kind of shakes you out of the illusion that she's trying to convince us she's a man.
I think their interactions in general are sweet. I mean, like the scene where Hubert says like, "Oh, your secret's safe with me," and that kind of thing, and shows some her breasts. Is very funny, just in like Glenn's like very over the top reaction. Like it truly is like, oh my God, which is like, I don't know, a very strange reaction given how stoic that he is in public situations typically. But yeah, weird little moment of comedy there. But
It's also the terrible she's talking to herself constantly. The what do
yeah,
you call it when you're giving away I'll come to me in a bit. So
like
she's
exposition.
exposition, that's the word, exposition.
Yeah,
Yeah. So she's constantly saying, "Oh, I must count my money to see how much money I've
yeah,
got been saving over the last 20 years."
right.
She's like, "Oh, this is so poorly written. If you can't find a way to weave that into the plot, then something's gone wrong, isn't it?
Yeah,
It's such exposition of like stuff that really hate that in a film when people talk to themselves. I mean, I talk to myself all the time, but it's usually like walking down the street remembering the best supporting actresses of 1952 or something. That's what
sure. Yeah,
I'm doing in my head. But
that's
I
like
don't.
your morning mantra.
Oh, it's not. No, seriously, genuinely, this is how I get to sleep every night.
I
So
love it.
if I'm laying in bed, I can't sleep. I will start best supporting actresses of the 60s, and I will work my way up until I fall asleep. And then the next day, I will start from the beginning again until I get to the end. That's literally
Wow,
every single night I remind myself with Oscar nominees. I'm so sad. But
I should
yeah,
try that.
when they're she's literally saying out loud what's going through her head, and it's just really poor writing, really, really poor writing, and really hard
Yeah,
to do as an actor to make that feel natural. It's
yeah,
not really possible, is it?
yeah. I mean, narration is something that like I don't always love, but I feel like this is a film that I would be fine if it had a little bit of narration because it's
Yeah.
such an internal kind of thing that Albert is going through. So like that would be more natural to me than what we're presented with here, which feels very like directly taken from the play
Oh,
of like
100%. Yeah, totally. Yeah, yeah.
yeah. So the scene that I think is sort of the centerpiece moment, I suppose, is when he goes to meet Hubert and his wife at their home, and he's kind of like astonished and feels a little bit of hope maybe in seeing they have this nice sort of domestic life together. And then that's where Albert reveals his backstory, which is that he was like a bastard child, and when he was living as a girl, like her mother died and was left alone when she was like 14 and gang raped. And soon after that is when he took on the male identity as Albert to serve as this waiter in the hotel, and that's what he's done ever since, which I think, kind of to the point you were mentioning before, it's kind of an unfortunate development there because it definitely
Yeah.
leans into certain negative sort of stereotypes with like trans narratives and having it be sort of about this traumatic sexual
Yeah,
incident sort of leading to a
100%.
person embracing a new identity, or like I don't know how much discussion there was about those kind of tropes at this time, but definitely
I
not
mean,
as much as there is now.
absolutely not. And certainly, if this is the play from
Yeah,
1982, that wouldn't have even been a discussion then. In fact,
yeah,
I thought that would be perfectly legit. Back
yeah,
then, things would have been changing by 2011. But certainly, the whole discussion and the understanding of this kind of stuff has happened since then. So that
exactly, yeah,
feels like back in 2011, never mind 1982, to be something that would probably feel legitimate. But now feels icky.
yeah. Or like it's sort of like, do we need an explanation even of
No.
like why Albert is the way that he is? Like I think the film actually might have been more interesting if it just sort of let us accept that Albert just wants to live as a man, and that's kind of just the end of it.
Absolutely. And it could have just as easily been, my mother died, I was an orphan living on the streets, this is the job I could get, and this is how I
Yeah,
we didn't need a gang rape element. That just
no.
feels like overkill, doesn't it? Really, really, really feels like
Mhm.
overkill. It's just entirely unnecessary.
Yeah, but I think Glenn performs that monologue well enough, and it looks like she's, reliving those traumas, just like I'm talking this out in front of someone probably for the first time and kind of dealing with that. I mean, it's nowhere near some of the great monologues she gives in like Dangerous Liaisons or Fatal Attraction, or honestly, even The Wife, to be honest. But there is a real anguish, I think, that does come through even amid all the makeup, even if I don't love the material. I think just like that feeling of just like being so upset and kind of like self-conscious about how I'm presenting is something that she taps into. Is it all that successful? Maybe not, but I think that is the best part of the performance, is just that total repression feeling, I guess.
Yeah, and this is what I say. This is what I mean when I say that it's not a bad performance. It's not. She's not.
Yeah.
It's not bad acting. It's just doesn't work. You can see other people in this role, which would just be really, really cringe. You can actually just imagine certain people just thinking, "What on earth are they doing?" And you don't think that with Glenn Close, she's too good for that. But you do just kind of think this just shouldn't have happened. You compare it to something like, Hilary Swank in Boys Don't Cry, whereas Hilary Swank just is completely convincing and
Yeah.
no makeup, no anything. It's just she just feels real, doesn't she? Whereas this feels like a pantomime in a way it just doesn't work in that sort of context.
Yeah, it feels just like theater to me that hasn't really been properly adapted into film and
Absolutely.
having it serve as a film itself. So it's a shame, because obviously I love her and it's her passion project, but I don't know. I just think there's a part where I'm like, I'm not sure if the film is really equipped to deal with the things that it's trying to do on many levels. And so it's just tough for me to fully recommend it ultimately. So that's pretty much all I have, unfortunately. I think the ending is really tragic, and
Yeah.
not tragic in the way that the film wants it to be, in the sense of like, just like, how did we end up here? It's just so abrupt.
But the character doesn't get an ending. The character just, it's almost like they
No.
die on the screen. It's like what,
Mm-hmm.
What happened there? And
Yeah.
yeah, and then also, I mean, I don't even the other two characters. Aaron Taylor Johnson disappears apparently off the island, and the Mia Wasikowska character is like that's all a bit like pat, isn't it? Like
Yeah.
how that goes. It's just so I have to say, my MVP in the whole entire thing is Pauline Collins, the great Pauline Collins, the national treasure as she is over here. Pauline Collins, who's just fantastic. I love her so much. I love the fact that every man who comes in her, it's like quite subtle, but every single man she comes into her like presence, she's eyeing up. She's like, she's just great. I love that woman so much.
Yes. And I didn't even know who Pauline Collins was when I first saw Albert Nobbs, which was many years ago. But after having seen Shirley Valentine
I was
and
gonna
knowing
say,
full
yeah,
well who she is, this was just delicious to see her again, and totally kind of hamming it up in a way. I feel like she understood the assignment of what the
yes, yeah,
film
yeah.
was. So not everyone did. So yeah, that's Glenn. Next time on the Glenn Watch, we'll be diving into her big The Wife moment. So that'll be a lot to relive for me personally, but this is an interesting pit stop on the way to that. Yeah. Anything else before we move on?
No, but just the thing about Glenn, it feels really weird to me that someone, I don't know, it's all caught up in like rights and all kind of stuff, but
Mm-hmm.
if she did Sunset Boulevard, she's winning, right? That's like, and just for someone somewhere could have found 20 million. It's not going to be a hugely expensive film. Someone somewhere could find 20 million to make it happen, like because it's going to get too late soon.
Yeah. Where are the gays to help out Glenn for
Exactly,
this? Like,
exactly.
it's
I'm sure, like Jake Gyllenhaal or Luke Evans or Hugh Jackman will come on board. Yeah, they'll help it. They'll help out. Someone's got to do it. Come on, gays.
there we go. I'm gonna leave that there. Okay. Let's move on to our next nominee here, Viola Davis in The Help. Okay, so this is a very exciting introduction here. Future EGOT winner Viola Davis gets her first Best Actress nomination for The Help, previously nominated in supporting for Doubt. So this is our first of two introductions for this episode. So Viola Davis was born in South Carolina, and she had a rough childhood and dealt with a lot of bullies, but she found acting and made it her passion, and she eventually studied theater and went to Juilliard. She broke into the business through theater and did off-Broadway shows and Broadway shows, and did some bit parts in film and TV, including a small role in Out of Sight. And she worked with Steven Soderbergh more in the 2000s in his films like Traffic and Solaris. Meanwhile, she wins her first Tony Award in 2001 for her performance in King Hedley II. She was in Far From Heaven. She worked with Tom Selleck in his Jesse Stone movies. So just kind of building up the resume until 2008, where she gets a key part as Mrs. Miller in Doubt. And she only has like less than 10 minutes of screen time, but nearly steals the show there and gains major attention and nominations, including supporting actress at the Oscars. And then she goes back to Broadway to star in Fences and wins another Tony, this time in lead. So
In lead, yeah.
yes, more on that later, perhaps. But that's a big turning point, and the help just makes her soar even more as she co-leads this film that makes over $200 million at the box office worldwide. This is based on the very popular Catherine Stockett novel of the same name, and it takes place in 1963, telling the story of a white woman named Skeeter, played by Emma Stone, who returns to her hometown of Jackson, Mississippi, and is horrified to see some of the systemic racism that's still in place. So she decides to write a book to get the firsthand accounting of various black maids who work for white families in town and get them to discuss their mistreatment and even abuse that they faced over the years. One of the maids is Aibileen Clark, played by Viola Davis, who dreams of a better life and is the first one to talk to Skeeter about her experiences. We also meet Aibileen's best friend, Minnie, played by Octavia Spencer, and a whole cast of characters, many of which are played by actresses who have now won Oscars. So, yeah, a lot of star power in this one. But yeah, let's get to it. Thoughts on Viola Davis overall and her performance in The Help?
Viola Davis is a very, very good actress who I have never quite warmed to. Who, oh God, how am I going to say this? I'm so glad she did not win for this role. I think if she had, we would look back now, people, in the same way that Meryl gets for winning, which we will come to, people are like, if she had won for this role, if she'd been the second black actress ever to win for this role, playing a domestic in a white savior movie, we would look back and people would be appalled by it. It would be one of those one of those wins that people look down on. And I'm so glad she did not win for this role. Having said that,
and so is she, for the record.
yes, absolutely, 100%. Having said that, I'm not at all happy what she did win for other reasons. There was this period of Viola Davis films when she played downtrodden domestic workers, and she was always crying, and there was always like snot in her nose, and it's just like it became quite oppressive. And this is why I love her in Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, which she's nominated for. She would have been my winner that year because it's a completely different Viola Davis. We hadn't seen like this before. This is what I love. She has the opportunity to do now, and I'm so pleased that she did not win for this. Having said that, I don't think it's a very enjoyable film. I understand all its faults. I literally watched it yesterday or the day before. She's probably the third time I've seen it, I think, and every single criticism that people have of it, I agree. Did I enjoy it? Yes, I did. That's just a fact. It's just very, very watchable. It's got great performances in it. It's like it looks great. It's very, very enjoyable. It's hugely flawed, but overall, I'm really. While you constantly hear people saying like, "Oh, she was robbed," etc. I'm like, no, seriously. If she had won, the backlash would have been horrific. It would have been Bohemian Rhapsody, Rami Malek levels of. Maybe not.
Maybe not quite that far, but yeah. I mean, the way people talk about like Halle Berry winning for like, oh, she had to take her clothes off. Like Angela Bassett even said things about like, I didn't want to like basically whore myself out on screen. I feel like a lot of the same dialogue would be happening with Viola Davis having to play a maid to win an Oscar, that kind of thing. Yeah. So I think The Help is so fascinating to watch now because it sort of got this huge relitigation, I guess, in 2020, especially during the height of the Black Lives Matter movement. And it was definitely thrown in the bucket of all the white savior movies and deemed problematic. Obviously, there was some writing about it kind of at the time, too, I think, sort of when it came out. But even some of the stars, such as Viola herself, has come to express regret for agreeing to even star in it because it does cater to a white audience primarily and kind of aims to entertain maybe more than really delve too much into the ugly stuff there. I still think all that is very fair as a criticism, and I agree that it's very whitewashed. But yeah, just watching it as a piece of entertainment, kind of like you said, I can't say it's not an engaging film to watch and just like put on, and it's a very funny film, and just like seeing this group of actresses bounce off each other and just like chew into these roles is just entertaining on like a base level. And yes, the message is pretty clear cut and it's not that educational ultimately, but I think it does have its heart in the right place. in a way, and it doesn't feel cynical or mean-spirited or like it's like
Oh,
obfuscating the truth, like in the case of The Blind Side, for example.
oh,
So
damn.
it's hard to get too mad at it individually. You know what I mean?
The one thing it does do, which like makes me kind of cringe, is that it knows that it's a white savior movie, and it's really
Yes.
conscious of this, and so it keeps trying to pretend otherwise. It keeps trying to give like agency to the black characters, and but it constantly lets the white characters off the hook, and then it constantly it pretends that it's let's get into it. Do you
Sure.
think she's being a supporting?
I think it's weird to me that I come away with it feeling like it is a borderline situation, because she starts off and I'm like, okay, this is Abelin's story and she's narrating and everything, and
Yeah.
then like in the middle of the film it just like completely forgets about her
Completely forgets about the rest.
until the end,
But
you know.
this is what I mean. This is why it wants to have it both ways, doesn't it? So this is a
Yeah.
white savior narrative. Emma Stone is the star of this film, and it's Emma Stone's story, right? It
Yeah.
starts off with Viola Davis, and I was thinking the same thing. I was thinking,
Yeah.
oh, I thought she was in this less, because I completely forget. It totally forgets about her. But then, literally, the last 5 minutes, it pretends it's been all about her all along. It absolutely has
Hmm.
not, you know. So
Yeah.
I think it's a definite borderline case. I remember reading back, when it first came out, there was lots of discussion on Gold Derby about whether it was lead or supporting. And I remember someone wrote, and it always stuck with me, either Emma Stone is lead and everyone else is supporting, or Emma Stone, Viola Davis, and Octavia Spencer are all lead and everyone else is supporting. What you can't do is split up Viola Davis and Octavia Spencer, because they have exactly the same, not the same role, but the same purpose in the movie. And that's how I've always sort of stuck with me. I mean, their screen time is, in fact, all three of their screenplays pretty similar. We're talking like, pretty much within sort of 10 minutes of each other or something. Um, yeah, it feels like it wants to have it both ways. It wants to be
Yeah.
a white savior movie to appeal to the masses, but at the same time, it wants to pretend it's actually about the Viola Davis character, which it really isn't. It really isn't. I'm not
Yeah.
mad she's in lead, but it doesn't quite feel right.
No,
It's interesting though that Emma Stone got absolutely no traction as a
it is
that
very funny. Yeah.
literally none,
Not at all.
nothing,
No,
nothing at
not
all.
even
Yeah,
a discussion. Yeah.
yeah.
But for me, I think for Viola Davis, she is someone that I've really loved and admired ever since Doubt, and I think she is
Oh,
one of
she's
those.
fantastic in Doubt. Yeah, she's absolutely fantastic
Yes,
in Doubt.
yes, who just for me has that like innate gravitas to
Yeah,
her that like you can't teach, almost like it's just something within her soul basically, and she just brings that to this role, I think, as much as she can. Aveline as a character is someone who can easily get lost among the larger than life characters we see in this film. And there are times when, like we said, the narrative doesn't really focus on her. But every time she is on screen, it does feel like someone, at least for me, where it's like you're seeing someone's lived experience of
yeah,
someone who has lived a lot of years as a subservient person, and she still loves, this young girl of the family that she works for, and like treats her as a mother, kind of like would treat her own daughter. But there's also like a little bit of just like that something is wanting to come out beneath that resignation to her life, of feeling like she just does have a lot of stories in her, but she hasn't had the chance to channel that any way because of the way things are. And she just kind of assumes, no one outside of my own community would even want to hear my stories. And even if she did like share them, she could be punished in some
yeah.
way. So I think that mix of emotion, it's a lot of face acting, I think, but she really has such a powerful presence. And she said she wanted to channel her mother and her grandmother through this performance, and I do think she gives that. I think it's just a complicated, when you look at the broad picture of what the character is and means and everything, it's tough.
I don't disagree with all of that. I think it's
Yeah.
especially about the gravitas that
Hmm.
Davis innately has, and I think that's almost a problem here, because that's not the film she's in. So she's almost acting in a different film to everyone else. It feels like she's given a dramatic performance, and everything else was around her is a lot frothier and
Played as a
lighter.
comedy. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Even the sort of dramatic moments, she's the only one who's actually properly committed to that. And this is true in Doubt. This is true in That's the Help, and also in Fences. She's playing not exactly the same character, but they're very similar characters in those three things, aren't they? I just struggle with how she fits in kind of to the overall picture. She's almost like too good for the material, which is why I'm not that big on her performance in it, because I think it just doesn't quite gel with everything else that's going around her. Not a criticism of her acting, more of a criticism of what she's being asked to being asked to do. I just quickly. I have a real issue with her fences win because she's quite clearly that is category 4 of the highest order. And
Yeah.
reason that I had a problem with it is she became a name because she got a supporting actress nomination for a like 7-minute role. Yeah. So
Mhm.
when you are now, you've become a star, you're a leading lady, and you shoehorn your way into a supporting role, sorry, in supporting nomination, you have basically taken out someone who potentially that could have happened to. You became the leading lady that you are now because of an Oscar nomination that you had got, and now by doing the exact opposite, taking a leading role, shoving it into supporting, you've then possibly, potentially had left someone else, out that could have done the same thing, and that really, really doesn't sit well with me. I actually asked her this. It was a Q&A after I saw Fences, and I asked her Q&A. I said something like, I said, oh, I'm an Oscar nerd, and like was losing in 2011 for a leading role that so many people saw as supporting. Is this why you have gone supporting now for what is clearly a leading role? And she said, "Oh no, I think I'm supporting Denzel's the lead in this category." I was like, "Oh, come off it, you know that's a lie." But she chose to do that. That was her.
Yeah.
She
That was her
chose to do
call.
it.
Yep.
Yeah. So that just leaves a bad taste in my mouth. So yeah, I'm glad it's over and done with. But she could have won. She could have won for what she deserved to win for Ma Rainey if she hadn't been so eager to get her mitts on a supporting Oscar.
Yeah.
Rant over. Sorry.
No, I don't disagree with some of what you're saying. I think some of it is very strategic what she did, but plenty of actresses have done that because the system allows for this to happen.
Yeah, I
You
just think
know.
when it happens, you then ruin what goes down the line. It has repercussions. It often has repercussions like
Yeah.
years and years later, doesn't it?
Hmm.
So even had repercussions for her for Ma Rainey. Frances McDormand wins her third, which I'm sure wouldn't have happened if people thought, oh, well, Viola hasn't got one at all, But she
True.
had just a
True.
few years back. Oh, which she's fine for now. We can give her another one in years to come. I feel like she could have been a Best Actress winner now, but she took the easy route.
Well, now she is an EGOT winner, so what
She
can
is,
we even
yes.
say?
What
So
can we say? Yeah.
yeah, I think the scene where she is like revealing that her son was injured on the job and the white foreman just dumped him off at the colored hospital, as she says, and he died, and just like the unimaginable horror of that. That is one of her best scenes, obviously kind of designed to be a great scene, but
Yeah.
really takes that opportunity, and just like her voice breaking as she starts talking about like her picking him up. I think it's very effective. And yeah, for as white savior and problematic as the film is, there is just an emotional rawness and a gravitas that really does make you feel like this woman's lived a life and she's able to sort of rise above those elements, even if it does mean sort of like pulling you down from some of the highs of the comedy. It is kind of like this grounding moment to sort of bring it back to the underlying darkness and the drama here. So I appreciate her performance for that reason, I guess.
Yeah, I've got no criticism of her actual performance. I just think within the context of what she's surrounded with, it doesn't quite work because we're still surrounded by primary colors. We're still surrounded by like, when people do period costumes, and the period costumes are always absolutely spot on and precise, and like
Yes.
everything looks like it's just come out of costume, not like any people have been wearing it. All of this, even in this, even the kind of set decoration, everything doesn't look lived in. It doesn't look real. It looks like, and when you're doing this really big dramatic performance surrounded by that, it just doesn't quite connect somehow. And often have to say the biggest crime in this entire film isn't the white savior narrative or like any of that. It's Emma Stone's wig.
That mop of curls. Yeah.
So distracting. I mean, just like you can
Yeah.
see the join. Like nobody's got hair like that. every just seeing that she's in, sat there like about to take notes or something, and I'm thinking, yeah, that wig's really, really bad.
I can't see past the wig. Yeah. Yeah. But I think maybe one of the reasons, again, that Viola does end up losing is, which I'm sure we'll get to, is that it is such an ensemble film and
Yeah.
so many actresses stealing the show. We have Octavia Spencer, Jessica Chastain, Sissy Spacek, who I forgot is actually really funny in this.
Yeah, me too.
Bryce Dallas Howard kind of playing a cartoon character, basically, but it is what it is. But we sort of do lose focus on her, which does lessen the impact because she is great. But
I think it's very, very true what you say about Octavia Spencer being there and being someone you can give an award to. So if you do like The Help, and even if you love Octavia Spencer, the fact that you're not, even if you love Viola Davis in The Help, you have the get out clause of being able to give an award to Octavia Spencer, who is like sort of very much like as important in the film as Viola Davis is, and then you can give your at best actress vote somewhere else. Little things like that really do make a difference, don't they? When people are voting, we all do it, but when you're wherever you're making a decision about something, you rationalize things in your mind, don't you? And you can totally see, oh, I'm giving The Help something over here, so I can go somewhere else over there. And I do think the fact that she's not central really, really does make a difference against these big powerhouse actresses, very much in the center of their film in the other ones.
Yeah. That's the thing. Of course, SAG didn't have a, too much of an issue with it because they loved The Help so much that they gave it ensemble and Viola and Octavia. So,
but I remember at the time, this was a big thing at the time, and everyone was saying, "Oh, Viola's going to win because she won SAG." If I remember correctly, the Iron Lady didn't send screeners out, so The Help was out in the summer and it made 200 million and like everyone had seen it.
Everyone saw it,
The Iron Lady comes out over Christmas. I don't think it actually comes out till like the first week in January or something. And screeners had not been sent out. And so people voted on the film they knew, people were voting on them they'd seen. And when it actually came round to voting on the big awards later, Meryl was winning. And people were outraged. It's outrageous. Look, they've stolen it from Viola. But that's, as I remember it, that wasn't the story. The story was people had not seen the Iron Lady at that point. So that feels to me why Viola won there rather than
more on that later. Yes. So I think she does end the film very strongly. I mean, the scene at the end where Hilly tries to get Aibileen fired, I think is really good for her, just in the power she has and being I feel more emboldened now in a way to move on with my life and stand up to Hilly, who is accusing her of stealing silverware and just, doing her Hilly thing and just looking dead in her face and being you're a godless woman. Ain't you tired, Miss Hilly? There's just so much power in her delivery. Yeah. And as she walks away and just resolves to not do domestic work again, you see that slight fear in her face, but also a little bit of that resolve to be okay, now I can actually move on with my life and follow my passion of being a writer, which I wish was slightly weaved in throughout the rest of the film, but that's fine. It is sort of cheesy in the end, but I think she does make it feel earned. So I don't know.
There is such a fudge in this whole film where they just do not go into at all. First of all, Emma Stone has two jobs in this. One is a vice economist for cleaning, and the other is writing a book. Both of which she doesn't do. She gets other people to do for her. The black women to do her jobs for her. That's completely ignored. The fact how dangerous this is they keep mentioning it and then they just go ahead anyway. Emma Stone, she keeps talking to people in the kitchen of their house. Can you please go away, leave me alone, or around the bus stop? And this is she's so unsubtle, and so many people know this is going on, And the repercussions are just she swans off to the big city for a job and lets everyone else deal with the repercussions, and we're supposed to think that's absolutely fine. It's so ill thought through, and so just sort of fudged over as if the audience isn't going to notice that hold on, this is a really, really poorly executed plan here. She's fine because she's gone off to work in the big city. Never mind. Doesn't so Viola Davis's character, who has been a domestic for 30 years or something, now she says she retires to become a writer. What does that even mean? What are you talking about? So
who knows?
It's really, really, really poorly explained. And even Ingenue Ellis, who goes to prison, but seems having a great old time in prison. It's just looks like a dorm, doesn't it? It's
that's the problem with making the film as light and easy to watch as it is that it when you look at stuff like that, it's wait a minute, how does that? So anyway, I think it's a really good nomination. Personally, I think she is one of the MVPs, even if she does certainly stick out in this ensemble in good ways, or as you might argue, not so good ways at times. But it's a great nomination. I love that she really used this lead, because we see this sometimes with, like, if it's a borderline case, like in Olivia Colman, for example, for The Favorite. She could have gone supporting, as many people kind of tried to argue, but she used it kind of like as a platform to be seen as a leading lady, and now she is a leading lady. So
100%. And I feel like this has been happening a lot more recently, hasn't it? People have been saying, no, I'm not going to. I love that, because
Lily Gladstone,
100% Lily Gladstone. Also, Michelle Williams again. Last year, or year before, who basically said, no, I'm top of the call sheet. I'm a leading lady. Both of those could have gone supporting. I don't think they were really supporting, but they could have gone supporting. There wouldn't be much outrage. But it's more important for them to be seen as the leading lady stars, that they are, as opposed to being what's seen as a demotion into supporting. And they're right to do so. Absolutely right to do so, because it changes the trajectory of your career. Lily Gladstone, how much have we heard about her this year? It feels like she's an actual stuff. I'm hearing about what her new performance, what her new projects are. It's like, if she'd just been a losing supporting actress nominee, she would have just gone straight back into being a supporting actress, wouldn't she? So no, absolutely the right decision. And I hope more people do that in the future, because the category forward is getting out of control.
All right, well, let's move on to our next nominee here, Rooney Mara in The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. So Rooney gets her first Oscar nomination here for The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. To introduce her here, Rooney Mara was born in Bedford, New York, and her parents' families founded NFL teams, Pittsburgh Steelers and the New York Giants, meaning they're very well off. But Rooney started taking interest in acting due to her love of movies, and also from seeing her sister, Kate Mara, pursuing a career as an actress. She did some TV guest spots in the mid-2000s, and her first leading role was in a film called Tanner Hall in 2009. She also professionally changed her name to Rooney, with her birth name being Patricia. She was... Yes, it's true. We could have been talking about Patricia Mara this whole time. Yeah. But anyway, she was in Youth in Revolt and A Nightmare on Elm Street, and she got a small but very memorable appearance in The Social Network, where she memorably opens the film and calls Mark Zuckerberg an asshole. Great scene. I think that's probably where I first saw her, and most people first saw her and recognized her talent. So anyway, next year, here we are. She's reuniting with David Fincher as the star of The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. And this is a very coveted role, one of those like Scarlett O'Hara types of roles, where the book was a huge bestseller. The character was, thought of as a really juicy one, and every actress in Hollywood within a certain age group was considered for it, including, I wrote down all of these names because it's just like everyone, basically. Jennifer Lawrence, Elliot Page, Kristen Stewart, Emma Watson, Vanessa Hudgens, Carey Mulligan, Keira Knightley, Scarlett Johansson, Anne Hathaway, Natalie Portman, just like, a huge range of ages and generations there almost. But apparently the final four possibilities were Rooney, and then Sophie Lowe, and Léa Seydoux, and Sarah Snook. But Fincher really wanted Rooney, and despite it being quite different from her role in The Social Network, he was able to convince the studio that she was right for the part. So this is based on the Stieg Larsson novel, and it's about a journalist, Mikael Blomkvist, Daniel Craig, who is embroiled in a libel scandal against a billionaire, but this old patriarch, Henrik Vanger, Christopher Plummer, recruits him to investigate the 40-year-old disappearance of his grandniece, Harriet, in exchange for him delivering intel about the billionaire. So he agrees to do it, and eventually he seeks out a research assistant, which is where Lisbeth Salander comes in. Lisbeth, played by Rooney Mara, is an antisocial, goth-presenting young woman with a history of sexual abuse who still has to have a state-appointed guardian, but her new one abuses her, and she gets back at him in a very memorable way. But she becomes kind of attracted to Henrik and his case, or not Henrik, Mikael, and which sort of reveals itself to be a serial murderer type of case. So a lot to talk about with this one. Thoughts on Rooney Mara overall and her performance here?
Rooney Mara leaves me completely cold.
Great.
Good actress, and she's not like a bad actress, but she's to me slightly sort of dead behind the eyes. I get no I get nothing. She, she doesn't give bad performances, but she just gives nothing to me. She's got no personality beyond like what she's acting. I know nothing about her. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but I don't get
Yeah.
personality on screen from her at all. Um,
Hmm.
that's not a criticism of her as an actress. It's more of a criticism of her as a screen personality. She's absolutely fine in this. She does absolutely nothing wrong. The issue is this film's just been made. I mean, it's literally been made 2 years before. Nimi Rapace just done this character in exactly the same way. That I've watched both films because I'm sad. I rewatched both films. Were you aware of the? No, you may be too young, but I read the books when they first came out, and it was a really big deal that the film got made. We watched the films from in Sweden in Swedish. It was a big sensation. The film it made over 100 million at the worldwide box office. It won the BAFTA as best foreign language. Nimi Rapace won got nominated to BAFTA as best actress. 2 years later, we have the American remake, which is an almost not a it's almost scene for it's not shot for shot. It's almost scene for scene remake. There's actually a few extra bits in the Swedish one, but you're just like, why? What's the purpose of this? I mean, it's a cash grab. That's not necessarily a criticism. It happens all the time. But for then people to be marveling over this great Rooney Mara performance and saying that she should have won and she was robbed, etc. And I'm just like, have you seen the original? Because Numira Pace, is it Numira Pace? Is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's already done this. It's been done. Rooney Mara brings nothing new to it. She doesn't give a bad performance at all. But I've literally seen this performance 2 years before. It's not as if it was a complete reimagination of the material. It's not. It's not as if we had like 60 years. So when Ariane DeBose won supporting actress for West Side Story, I'm feel exactly the same way. We've already seen this. Rita Moreno's already done this. You do a great job, but you're doing absolutely nothing that Rita Moreno's already done. At least there was 60 years in between. Here, there's 2 years in between. And it's not like it was an obscure film in the first place. You haven't remade an obscure film that nobody saw. This film made over 100 million at the box office and won loads of awards. So it just feels like an entirely pointless nomination to me. As I say, not a criticism of her. She does absolutely everything she needs to do. But I just don't understand the sort of real love for this particular performance when it's almost a copycat of what we've seen 2 years before.
Interesting. Wow. Okay. Well, I will say I like Rooney Mara. I feel like somehow I've seen a lot of her filmography and not really intentionally. Like I just somehow have watched most of her films, just like not even as an exercise, just like I've always seen a lot of them for some reason and enjoy her in some and then is, a very low key presence often. But capable of being warm, I think, in the case of like Women Talking, I think she's very good in that and, very withdrawn in other roles like Carol and, some of her smaller indie stuff. I remember not for this film being super enthused when it was happening because it definitely felt like the Swedish films were enough and we didn't really need an English version. So there wasn't a lot of enthusiasm on my part going into this the first time. I did read the book. I saw the first Swedish film at least. I don't know if I saw the other two, but so definitely familiar with Noomi Rapace's performance and everything. So I feel like I was a little disappointed when I maybe first saw this while still liking Rooney's performance. But for one reason or another, I've watched this quite a few times actually over the years, this version, and it has grown in my estimation over time. I think just having David Fincher here is the great director for this material.
Yeah.
I think just the sheer amount of material that the film goes through in adapting the story is very impressive, and I think it did deserve that film editing Oscar that it got. And I think her performance is key to the success above all because this is an iconic character and a lot of book readers loved and fans of the Swedish films love this character. So I'm sure it was very daunting, but just sort of taken on its own without all that baggage that you were talking about, I do think she nails the isolation that Lisbeth feels and also like the bluntness of her, like this very antisocial but still confident in her abilities. And, it's a lot that's asked of her, but unlike I think some of those actresses I named, I don't ever feel like she's kind of like posing or false as this kind of person. because I feel like it could be very like I just feel like she inhabits this specific kind of like very isolated, quiet, and like weird and nervy type of character very well. So it's good casting at least.
Yeah, I've got no problem with the casting, especially when you consider the list of people it could have been. I mean, some of them would have made sense. I think
Yeah,
like Kristen Stewart would have made sense. Natalie
sure.
Portman probably could have pulled it off, but like Vanessa Hudgens.
Yeah.
What? So yeah, I got no problem with the casting at all. It just feels unnecessary. Would be my. It's not criticism of her acting. She does a perfectly decent job, but I just feel like
Mhm.
the job had already been done. The Fincher film is a lot slicker, a lot glossier, a lot more expensive looking, and probably slightly more entertaining than the original for those reasons. It's a
Yeah.
big budget Hollywood one, whereas the Swedish one is really ugly to look at. I don't know if it's almost completely disappeared off of streaming. I ended up
Mhm.
watching it on YouTube, and I don't know if it was just the transfer onto YouTube that was bad, but it's really, really ugly to look at. But yeah, overall, it's basically basically the same film. It's just basically the same film, so I can't really get on board with it. That's all. Not a criticism of her specifically. She's fine, but yeah, I just feel like I've seen it already.
Yeah, that's all fair. It does feel slightly redundant in that
Yeah,
context. But I think, like I said, if the role isn't cast right, I think this whole presentation and the sensibility could feel very performative and even silly and like obvious feeling. But I do think she just inhabits it the right way. And her as an actress, she's so introverted and often very socially awkward at
yeah,
times that like there is no doubting that she is Lisbeth in some way. Like she is this person who's gone through a lot of trauma and now is like carrying herself in a way to protect herself from more trauma, like intentionally making herself appear in a certain way,
yeah.
you know?
I think it's actually pretty great casting because otherwise, if it's someone you know too well, it starts to
Yeah.
feel dress up. It starts to feel
Hmm.
like, oh, there's Natalie Portman putting rings to her nose. And
Right.
you
Right.
bring the baggage of other performances with it. You bring the baggage of what she looks like, on a red carpet or a set. You know that's not real. And so because Rooney Mara was not particularly well known at this point, that totally 100% works. Yeah, good job there. I remember this whole the whole search, who is it going to be? And I remember it being named as Rooney Mara, and me being like, who on earth is that? And in fact, for years I thought her name was Mara Rooney. E-
Oh.
Even past, I'm talking like probably for the next decade, not decade maybe, but like for the next 5 years, I thought her name was Mara Rooney. Um, so yeah, I think very, very good casting. The casting's not the issue at all. I think she
Yeah.
does a fine job for what she's given.
Yeah, and the way she speaks, I think, is very intentional, and creating this effect of like, it's not like I don't know what to say in this situation and I'm scared of social interaction. It's more like I don't even bother to care about like what other people think, and I'm just gonna say what I want and do what I want to do, regardless of what other people might think about me or say. So,
Yeah, it's not made explicitly, but there's sort of hints of like being on the spectrum or something, isn't there? She sort of
yeah. Hmm.
talks very bluntly in kind of inappropriate ways to people and that, and I think that's kind of said without
Yeah.
being said out loud. So
Yes, such as when she is like meeting with the computer hacking group in the beginning or whoever they are, they're investigating Blomquist and she's talking about what she's found and like about his getting it on with his wife and she's like sometimes he performs cunnilingus, not often enough in my opinion. Which is just very funny in this very dry way that I just enjoy it. And I think that plus like her being really good at her job and just the circumstances of her guardian being abusive to her, like all that does set us up to see her as a hero type. But yeah, I think she just brings a nice unique sort of quiet confidence that does compel you.
it's interesting how they clearly bought the rights to make an American remake of it, and then only make one because they clearly, as always happens, they spent too much money. The original cost like 12 million and made 120 or something, and then this one
Hmm.
cost 120, made 200 or some nonsense. It's like
Yeah.
it's
Hmm.
bizarre how you look at the money that gets spent on American films when it made anywhere else in the world, they would make it for like a quarter, if not
Yeah.
a tenth of what they do, and then the profits could be. Oh, if we ran the industry, right?
If only. Yes, that's Hollywood for you. Yeah. I think obviously the scene we should talk about is when she has to go to her new handler's place for an advance on her allowance. And that's obviously very harrowing because he drugs her and ties her up and rips her clothes off and rapes her. And it's just like her writhing in the bed and screaming and just trying to get out of this horrible situation, which is very hard to watch. And she really goes for broke in that scene. But then it's, of course, revealed that she's kind of strategically placed a camera in her bag to capture all this so she can incriminate him later, which I think does kind of add this really interesting dimension to all this, because on some level she is using a little bit of the manipulation tactics to outsmart someone who is manipulating her and kind of having to be violated in a very brutal way to do so. And I think she nails the kind of dissonance of that, of like setting this plate in motion, but also having it come as a price for her. Like she says later on, like she expected this to just be like a blowjob and that's it, and not realizing the full extent of what he would do to her. So just like the toll of that emotionally and physically. And I think it makes sense that right after this, we see her like go out and get another tattoo, like in a place that the tattoo artist says is like, are you sure about that? Like, it's going to be very painful, but it's kind of like her channeling her pain, I think, physically is kind of what we should get from that.
Yeah, in the way it's done, it's like she's never actually the victim, even though she's being victimized. She always feels like in control, doesn't she?
Yeah.
There's backstory that isn't shown in this film. It's in the books and it's in the Swedish versions. Which is, as a kid, she actually set fire to her father, who we assume was abusive, and so that's why she's, after all these years, 10 years later, still under guardianship. We don't see that in this film at all, so the context is kind of missing, isn't it? It's not really explained at all why she's actually still got a guardian at age 23 or something. And I assume that would have come in later films, which never got made. So it's hard to tell what you would think if you hadn't read the books and hadn't seen the original film. I feel that's slightly unclear as to what's going on in that, and that also leads into maybe her character making less sense if you haven't got that back information, because it's not really clear why she's like she is. But no, she does a good job. I'm not criticizing her. I'm not criticizing her performance. I'm criticizing the lack of imagination in both Hollywood and the Academy. The Academy.
Yeah, I am also curious your thoughts on how it depicts the relationship with her and Blomkvist once she kind of gets involved with him and is working, and then they kind of develop a romantic relationship. Curious your thoughts on how they depict it in this version.
It's pretty much the same in both versions, I think. But it's just it's icky to watch, but at the same, because she basically, I knew it was coming. I knew the moment was coming when they they get together. But then I'd forgotten that she's kind of the aggressor in the situation. She almost forces it on him rather than the other way around, which again is putting her in the control seat. It's making her not the victim, even though it's an inappropriate relationship as we would see it now. But how inappropriate is it if it's her that actually pursues it in the first place? So it's very sort of blurred lines, as you may say. I really wish they'd left that out of the book and films. It just doesn't sit well with me. It just feels entirely unnecessary. Could they not have just been partners in this without having to bring a sort of sexual element to it? It just feels a distraction to me. It just doesn't, and it also doesn't feel very convincing. And then at the end, she's getting more out, it seems, someone who pushes people away and doesn't have intimate relationships, etc. But she seems to have got an attachment with him, and she wants to further it. She's bought him I don't know if this is in the, I can't remember which one it's in, if it's in both. She buys him a present to give to him, but then when she goes to the office to give it to him, she sees him with his actual long-term girlfriend who's married. That's another whole subplot. And she's kind of made at the very end to be slightly pathetic figure. I feel like it just doesn't, because she's such a strong character throughout and such a sort of almost sort of feminist icon throughout, to find her in this position of vulnerability at the end just doesn't, come on, guys, why does it need to be like that? It didn't sit well with that. None of that sits well with me in whichever medium it's put in.
Yeah, well, I mean, my knee-jerk reaction to it is okay, this is not necessary. But seeing it again, and especially trying to focus on Lisbeth and her perspective through this, I can sort of understand how it's like she's having a relationship with a man who does treat her as an equal and
Yeah.
doesn't try to take advantage of her. Plus, he's very attractive. He's a Daniel Craig. And, she's sort of,
I have to say less so in the original. The original.
yeah. But she is sort of just turned on, I think, by like their shared passion, I guess. And like she does act as the aggressor in terms of seducing him and leading to them having sex. And she's so blunt and confident in what she wants that it becomes like, oh, this is very interesting sort of power dynamic here, because she's really owning her sexual power, and it does feel sort of connected to her channeling her passion for solving this case in a odd way.
Yeah.
I'm sure you could argue that it doesn't really need to be there, but I don't know. I appreciate that, and also like her other like one night stand that she has with the woman from the club, just to show like she's not defined by her trauma of being abused in the past, and that she does transcend stereotypes of like the antisocial, sexless sort of, freak or whatever people would want to say about her. Like she has her own kind of sexual confidence to her that really is compelling. So I appreciate that element is in here. The way it's presented is maybe a little clumsy, but like it's not like an Albert Nobbs situation where I'm just like, does this person have any sort of passion for anything in their life? Like,
Yeah, it just almost feels like it does the character a slight disservice. It would have been more interesting if it had been the other way around. If he'd been attached to her and she was having none of it. She had other better stuff to be getting on with. It just, I don't know, it just slightly feels, it kind of undermines the character to me. But it's really strong source material. The underlying material is great. The books are just, they're not exactly good. They're just like for such page turners,
they're airport novels,
totally airport novels, but great ones. You literally, it's that. Oh, just read a few pages, and then you're like, you've read 100 more pages. They're really, really great, and it's hard to make a bad film out of that material, which they haven't. The films are really, really pretty good. But yeah, just the overall that slight character arc in there doesn't sit well with me.
Yeah, that's fair. And I think the whole point towards the end, like we haven't talked a lot about like the case or anything because that's not super involved with the performance or anything.
Too complicated.
Yeah, too complicated to get into, too much of a diversion. But the whole thing where she goes and saves Blomquist when he's tied up by Martin, Stellan Skarsgård, who turns out to be the killer, of course, because it's Stellan Skarsgård. But, it is a nice sort of subversion, of course, to like have her be the one to save him. And
he's the damsel in distress, isn't he?
Yeah, he is. Just the look of determination, I think, on her face after she like asks Blomquist, like, can I kill him? And he gives her the okay. This is kind of where she becomes like cool vigilante superhero sort of thing, but I think it's such a well-defined character by this point, and she does a good job of just filling in the little idiosyncrasies that I get to a point of feeling like I do understand like how she would react in a lot of different situations, which to me makes for a good character and a well-written character, and kind of wanting to follow her into other sequels, even though we didn't actually get them from this version.
Yeah, which is a shame. There's three of the others, isn't there? The others finished the first three of the books.
Yeah,
the books carried on after that, but they didn't do them. But it is a bit of a shame because it's a really decent thriller, and we don't really get those sort of
we don't
anymore, do we? Book adaptations, thrillers, all that kind of stuff is great. That's the kind of stuff films I often love. It's such a shame that all that kind of stuff has fallen by the wayside, and I think it's very much to do with spending way too much on a film that can't quite recover its cost. You could have made that film.
That's fair.
Sure, you could have made that film for 50 million, couldn't you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm also just thinking, like, I feel like I've said this many times in doing this Best Actor series, at least from this decade or so, but like today, I feel like The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo is probably made into like a mini series.
100%, or it's on Netflix. Yeah, there's absolutely no way that gets a theatrical release.
Yeah. So, for better or for worse, depending on how you feel.
Well, it would definitely be worse because it would be dragged out over 10 episodes, wouldn't it? When it only needed to be
very much would. I remember reading the book and being like, why are there so many like diversions about like food and like things that they're eating? So there'd be a little more opportunity to do that. I don't know. Anyway, do you have anything else to add on this one before we move on?
No, but as we're going through these all, I'm really like, racking my brains as to how I rank these, but we'll come to that later.
Yeah, I guess we'll see. Let's move on to our final losing nominee here, Michelle Williams for My Week with Marilyn. Okay, so Michelle Williams gets her second consecutive Best Actress nomination here for My Week with Marilyn, her third overall. Because we just talked about her last week with Blue Valentine, not much to update in terms of what she's been up to since then. The only other movie she has in between this is Meek's Cut Off, another Kelly Reichardt collaboration for her. So we can get right into My Week with Marilyn here, directed by Simon Curtis, and Michelle was apparently the only actress that he had in mind for this role, and she's the only person who met with producers for it. So this was not one of those highly sought after Lisbeth Salander situations here. It was always Michelle. So, she read biographies and studied her and did all the things that you do to prepare to play Marilyn Monroe. But this film is not your typical biopic, I guess, in a way, even if it has some of the trappings of that. This is based on the experiences of Colin Clark, who spent a week as personal assistant on the set of The Prince and the Showgirl and had a brief relationship with her. So that's the perspective of the film, is seen through Colin's eyes, played by Eddie Redmayne, as he looks to break into the industry, and Marilyn takes a liking to him as she also struggles to remember her lines and causes a lot of grief for the director and star, Laurence Olivier, played by Kenneth Branagh. But Marilyn starts to value her relationship with Colin because, he treats her like a person, not a commodity or someone to be mocked. So let's talk Michelle Williams, thoughts on Michelle as an actress, and her big, big performance here as Marilyn Monroe.
Okay, I absolutely love Michelle Williams. I think she's potentially the greatest actress of her generation. She's just great, and she's great in all of her nominations. Maybe, okay, there's some later ones missed out, but she's so good in Blue Valentine the year before. And I think that she is one of those actresses. Well, she's 5 nominations in there, isn't she? Who is gonna win one at some point because she consistently does excellent work. And
we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. We could have said that. There's plenty of people who could have said that about, isn't there?
Yeah.
She consistently does get interesting, work. She's a fantastic actress. I do not think this works at all, and I don't think this works.
Oh.
I don't think this works because the voice is right, the look's right, the performance is right, but you can't. Michelle Williams is an actress. She's a great actress, yeah, but she's not a star. She's not a star.
Yeah.
She had been in the 50s. She'd be Eleanor Parker. She wouldn't be Marilyn Monroe. Yeah. And you can't act your way out of that. You can't turn that on to become Marilyn Monroe, because Marilyn Monroe, it's not about the acting. It's about the star persona. It's about a light in her. It's about a star power that we see on screen, bigger, better than probably anyone in the history of Hollywood. You can't make that happen. It's almost impossible to play Marilyn Monroe. I think on my Letterboxd review, I said something like, "You can't act Marilyn Monroe any more than you can sing Aretha or dance Fred Astaire." It's like it can't be done. So this isn't Michelle Williams' fault. But when she's on screen, am I captivated by her? Can I not take my eyes off of her? No, she's there. She's doing a good job. But no. There's right at the very beginning, she does a version. Is it Heat Wave or something? She does.
Wave.
Yeah, and it's just like, that is not Marilyn Monroe on screen. You watch Marilyn Monroe doing Heatwave. There's every little gesture. There's like a raise of an eyebrow from Marilyn Monroe does more than all the dramatics in the world. There's nothing you can do about that. Michelle Williams is a great actress. Michelle Williams is not a star. Marilyn Monroe is the ultimate movie star, and you can't just pull it off. You can't act your way out of that. So unfortunately for me, it's a dud, but a nice try, but a dud all the same.
Wow. Yeah, I feel like this is one of those performances where I have seen a lot of opinions on it, and I can't fault people for feeling the way they feel, regardless of what they think of it. Like, I agree that she's not Marilyn Monroe, and it's hard for anyone to really recapture that magic that Marilyn had, because it's truly one in a million. I think the way that she finds a way in is very Michelle Williams, in the sense of like capturing the loneliness and the isolation that Marilyn felt, of like having to live up to so many people's expectations, so many men's expectations in particular, and the exhaustion of that, the toll it takes on your body and your mind. And that's where you see the actress who has become Kelly Reichardt's muse and, become such a great indie darling come into play here. I think this definitely was a big risk for her to play a character so bold and vivacious when she's not naturally known for that.
Yeah.
She is mostly a low-key presence and very thoughtful, and I think, she mostly does a good job with it. Is this an all-timer performance? Definitely not, but it is a good interpretation in the middle of a film that I don't particularly love. But she's the highlight of the film, even while not always meeting that star power. Like you said, the first time we see her like recreating the Heat Wave performance, it is missing a little bit of that Marilyn X factor. Like she's a little too demure, feel like, almost, compared to the very open sort of like playfulness that Marilyn typically would have on screen. So it seems to me like when she is like playing the character of Marilyn, as in like, being bold and, vivacious and everything for other people like on screen, that's where I struggle with the performance.
Yes,
but then
100%.
It's just when she is behind closed doors, no one else around, just her and Colin, that's where I actually see something quite nice.
That's absolutely fair. Yeah, she, as I say, she's a very, very good actress. You can see there's little things she does which are great. She's really it's through, and the voice is pretty good. It's all. But when you've got to turn it on, so we as an audience have to understand why this woman is so fabulous, why she's worth all the fuss. And there's moments where she does stuff, and then everyone says, "Oh," there's at one point she does this whole big, what my actress friend Sarah calls business. There's all this stuff to do. I can't remember what the scene is, but she does it all, and she gets a round of applause, and everyone goes, "Oh, this is why she's worth it." And you're thinking, really? Was what? Really? That wasn't particularly impressive, because the light's not on. The light isn't on in the same way that it is with Marilyn Monroe. I feel like I'm saying this a lot, not a criticism of Michelle Williams as such. I just think it's like an impossible fool's errand. You can't. No one. I don't really see how you can play Marilyn Monroe, as we saw relatively recently, didn't we? So.
Yeah, Hollywood has tried many, many years to perfect the Marilyn, on-screen performance.
The thing is, if you could pull off Marilyn Monroe, then you'd be Marilyn Monroe.
You'd be Marilyn Monroe. Fair point.
You would be that bigger star. There's so few people, in the entire history of Hollywood who have that thing, that one thing that makes you so special. We're talking like a handful, and in order to pull it off, you kind of need to have that. And Michelle Williams doesn't. That's not a criticism about Michelle Williams, who I think is a fantastic actress. I love, but it just doesn't. It just feels flat, And the one thing that Marilyn Monroe is not is flat.
Yeah. Well, so I did, watching the film, have to remind myself, this is Marilyn Monroe through the filter of Michelle Williams, which means she's not going to recapture the magic, but in her own way, I think she does her best with it. Like, the whole thing when like Colin is knocking on the door at one point, and like Paula Strasberg is there and answering, and like he sees Marilyn in the mirror, clearly like frustrated, like not able to grasp the script that she's working on, and she just is like, really, you feel like the personal demons there, but then like when she looks and sees Colin in the door and doesn't quite know him quite yet, she does sort of turn on a dime when she sees him and sort of like apologizes for her appearance, even though, she looks perfect. But just like the slight little hesitance there of like not wanting to express any sort of like negativity or ungratefulness or anything, or like break the illusion of what she's sort of become. I think that is very compelling, and I think that is what probably interested Michelle the most, and that's why I think that's what I respond to in her performance, is that sort of thing.
I agree with all of that. I think take Marilyn Monroe out of this, make it a film about an actress struggling on a TV set,
a fictional actress.
And she'd be given a great performance. Unfortunately, that's not quite the job at hand.
Yeah. I'm curious your thoughts on like those scenes on the set of the princess and the showgirl, of her like struggling to remember her lines and things like that, because it is this very meta thing, obviously, of an actor having to act poorly in a
Yeah, yeah,
way.
yeah. It's
What do you think of those?
it's Valentina Cortese in Day for Night, isn't it? Like just not,
There you go.
not there to get it right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
she's very good at it. She does a great job in those moments. I think also she's kind of hamstrung by what's surrounding her. You know, the plot's kind of flimsy. Kenneth Branagh's doing a terrible job as
Yeah.
Laurence Olivier.
Yeah.
She's got Dame Judi Dench right there, stealing
Hmm.
every scene she's in, playing someone who still steals every scene she's in. You know, a great
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
there. She's fantastic, and she feels
Hmm.
almost at home in the whole thing. I think she feels like she's really like got the gist of the whole thing. She's very good at all the business, all the stuff, all the line forgetting and getting it wrong, and it's all very well done.
Yeah.
Overall, over distance of the performance, but you just watch this and you just kind of think, what a nightmare, you know. Much as I
Hmm.
love much as I love Marilyn Monroe, just absolutely exhausting, you know, how it must have been. You really do sympathize with, in this case, Laurence Olivier, but you know, it could be Billy Wilder, whoever it is that working with her. You can just really sympathize with just what an
Hmm.
absolute nightmare she must have been to work with, you know. And that is only a payoff when you see the film and she's so marvelous in it, which is the bit I think that's missing here. That's really the
That's true.
problem. We
Yeah.
really need to see that why it's worth the while going through this whole struggle with her, and I don't feel like we see that. So um,
Yeah. I think we see a few like little scenes in like the screening room, for example, but yeah, doesn't really get dwelled on too
well,
much.
we're told it. We're told that they say, "Oh, look, isn't she wonderful?"
Yeah.
No,
No. Yeah.
it's
That's true.
not quite what
Not quite
not
seeing
quite
it.
what I
Yeah.
saw. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think she makes that sort of feeling of like out of her depth, almost like disassociating, that felt very real and frankly relatable, tapping into this very insecure sort of imposter syndrome type of thing, and being like, oh, I'm not on the same wavelength as these people as they, play out the scene. Everyone's got this like great patter to them, like this great rhythm working off each other, and then it just like halts to a stop once it gets to
Yeah.
her. And
And
yeah.
that's really relatable. You can totally see how sort of total fish out of water. You know, she's clearly insecure, but maybe in her own environment where she's like,
Mm,
she's the big star. People are really catering to her. Here, you come over to England, so first of all, you're you know, it's not your usual environment, but also you're working with Sir Laurence Olivier, the greatest actor of his generation, and you've probably agreed to it as a great opportunity. And you get there, and you can totally see why she's been so intimidated. Obviously, she ends
yeah.
up making it worse by bringing her coach with her and like not knowing the rest of it. So it's almost like a self-defeating thing, isn't it? And I'm sure it kind
Yeah.
of one thing leads to another. So you can totally get all that. Like,
Hmm.
and I think Michelle Williams does a really good job of like just the she getting flustered and like, you know, just not being able to perform in the moment, all through just a lack of confidence. Yeah, so
Yeah.
yeah, she has really good moments. She's not, as
Hmm.
I say, I think she's a really good actress.
Yeah. So to speak to the relationship that sort of forms between Marilyn and Colin, I don't exactly think that they have great chemistry necessarily, but I can sort of understand like what she sees in him. Like he seems to be a regular sort of like good head on his shoulders type of guy. He's young, unlike most people she interacts with, and he just seems like a decent young man, someone she can maybe trust. I think some of her like giddy energy, at least in the beginning of their relationship, is kind of sweet because it's like she can actually sort of be herself around him, and possibly because he's seen some of the darker moments that like he doesn't seem to put off, or he doesn't seem to fetishize her either. Like he just sees her as a real person, and there's these little glances she gives in the film that look like a real sense of gratitude, even with the sort of underlying melancholy of it, the very Michelle Williams.
I think he doesn't want anything from her. Is it? He's
Yeah.
not after anything, which everyone around her is wants something from her, you know. And
Hmm.
he's not doing that. It's odd. Eddie Redmayne is just a really odd one. I know he's like wildly, widely disliked. I don't dislike him. I think he's kind of good in things, but I you say she has no chemistry with him. Who's ever had chemistry with Eddie Redmayne? It's like it's just really
Yeah.
not really a thing, is it? You know?
Fair enough. I think the movie kind of hinges on it, so it's yeah. I don't know. I think their surprise little getaway thing where they escape for like a day off is kind of
They go to
sweet.
Windsor Castle and Eton and that.
Yeah, and they go to the library, and it's like
Yeah,
this rare opportunity for her to just be herself and like
yeah.
have a dream a little different life for a bit. Like it's a kind of a corny situation and moment, but
Straight
her
Roman holiday.
yes, but her like seeing the little figurines of this man and a woman and this family and like imagining it as her and Colin as a family. I think there's a quiet power in that little moment because she does kind of like fantasize for a bit, and then it's just that like come back to reality moment. But you know, in certain moments, like after that, within that, she is like consciously playing the part of Marilyn for these people who have gathered around them, and
She,
her
she,
just
she
kind
said
of
something like, "Shall I show her? Shall I bring her out, or shall I?" Something like that, doesn't she?
yes,
Which means she's very much aware that Marilyn Monroe is a sort of a construct in some way.
yeah,
But there's not a clear, for me, definition between the two in the film. Um,
yeah,
if we'd had, I mean, that's presumably she did have that voice in real life, but that voice has to be an affectation at some point. I mean, maybe it becomes her voice,
mm-hmm.
but I don't think she was speaking like that when she was like 12, I'm sure. So it feels like something that, as a real person, Marilyn Monroe put on and then kind of almost got stuck with. It's
Yeah,
such a. I just think how great she could have been in years to come. I always think of like
I
role
know.
she could have played that would just be like, how would she'd be so great in Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf?
Oh
Like
my god. Well, that would be interesting for Mike
in the
Nichols
seven.
to
No,
reckon.
I don't even mean in that. I don't even mean in
Not
that.
literally that version, but yeah,
No, I don't mean that version. I just mean like in years to come. You know,
yeah,
she
yeah,
could have
yeah.
got rid of the sort of baby doll voice and gone full
Right,
because
that's
that's
true.
what I feel like at some point she would have gone full blousy Shelley Winters. You know, that's what I see Marilyn Monroe
Yes,
like
love it.
in 20 years time, and I just think the stuff she could have done because underneath it all, underneath the blonde, underneath the figure and all the rest of it, she's a really good actress who
Hmm.
almost was constricted by her star power, you know. Um, and
Yeah,
clearly was a very intelligent woman who wanted to do other stuff, but had built up this facade which made her successful, and then couldn't get out from under it. And you just hope that in years to come, she maybe would have been able to do that little by little, and the things she
yeah.
could have given us would have been so much more sort of interesting than what she was able to give, what she got trapped in. Yeah,
Hmm.
real
I
shame.
have to say now that you said Shelley Winters, I am picturing Marilyn Monroe in the Poseidon Adventure. And I think that would have been fabulous.
Yeah, but all of that, I mean, they were really good friends, weren't they? They were really good friends
Yeah.
in the early 50s. I think they lived together at one point. But just like that's the career trajectory I would have wanted for her, not
Yeah.
not the keeping up the glamour girl to the the last
Yeah.
minute and like getting normal plastic surgery, whatever it might be. That's not what I would have wanted for her. It would have been really good if someone could have like, somehow harnessed that and let
Yeah.
go of the
I agree.
the construct.
Hmm. So towards the end of the film, she, of course, is making it clear to him that he should just pretend that this week with her never happened and that she intends to stay with Arthur Miller and, doesn't want to break his heart, but also like she knows what her priorities are and that she still does want on some level to be a star and have the life she's been leading with Arthur. But like at least this 1 week allowed her some escape, which I think she has the right amount of like bittersweet energy towards the end. Like, it's not quite as effective because I don't really care about their relationship ultimately, but
At all.
so it's like not perfect, but the one effective scene at the end for me is when she is saying goodbye to like the cast and crew and she says something about like how she tried her best. It's like this mea culpa almost of her behavior and you can tell she really means it. So
It's interesting that at the end of this film, she says, I hope I did my best," and I hope she did realize that not only did she do her best, but she like completely overshadowed Laurence Olivier in his own film, and that's not something that people often get to
yeah,
say.
yeah. So last thoughts on Michelle Williams. I think it's a very good performance, honestly, in kind of a vacuum, again, of like not thinking too much about this having to be the one in a million Marilyn Monroe thing, just as the story of a very isolated actress who feels kind of trapped and is, I don't know, just trying to figure out some level of happiness wherever she can find it. I think that is what Michelle Williams keys into.
In that context, she's very, very good.
Yeah.
It's just not quite the context of the
film. I know. All right. Shall we move on to our winner?
Let's.
Well, here we go. Meryl Streep in The Iron Lady. Her second Oscar in Best Actress, third overall. It's been 29 years since Sophie's Choice, with many, many nominations and losses in between. Last time we talked about Meryl was for Julie and Julia, which was only 2 years prior. Didn't have a film released in 2010, so The Iron Lady was her very next film, where she finally had the sort of climax of this gradual buzz to get her a third Oscar. This is obviously a major transformation yet again for Meryl, playing Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher and working with Phyllida Lloyd, her director from Mamma Mia. She studied her extensively and even sat in on a Parliament session to observe the kind of leadership style, did her homework as always. But the film takes place in both the present and the past, and it mostly revolves around an elderly Margaret Thatcher mulling about her home and talking to the ghosts of her late husband, played by Jim Broadbent, and we get flashbacks to her rise to power as a member of the Conservative Party and how she faced sexism within Parliament but tried her best to just keep her resolve, and we sort of speed through some of her policies and the backlash to them, but it's essentially a snapshot of her sort of remembering her life. So yeah, here we go. I know you have quite a differing opinion on this performance compared to the general consensus, at least on film Twitter. So tell me your thoughts first on Meryl Streep and then her performance in The Iron Lady.
I mean, you don't need to hear my thoughts on Meryl Streep. I mean, what's there to say?
I don't know. You could be a secret hater for all I know.
that would be madness. Meryl Streep is one of the all-time greats. Meryl Streep,
yeah,
easily deserves 3 Oscars. No issue, problem with that whatsoever. Mm-hmm. My thoughts on The Iron Lady are absolutely dreadful film, absolutely phenomenal performance. She's just, I mean, so far and away the best performance here. It's not even close. It's not even like, I think this is one of her best ever performances. I think it's one of the best performances to win this century. I think she's just phenomenal, and I say that this is why I asked to do this edition. Firstly, because that's not the conceived opinion, is it? I mean, most people disagree with that, and I'll come to it in a minute. But secondly, I lived through Margaret Thatcher. I'm British. Throughout my entire childhood, Margaret Thatcher was the Prime Minister. Meryl Streep nails her. She absolutely nails her. I remember when I went to see it, I remember what cinema I saw it in, I remember where I was sitting. And I just, at one moment, I just rewatched it just this afternoon, and I can't remember which exact moment it was, but at one moment I thought it was a clip of documentary rather than actually Meryl Streep. Only for a second. I was like, oh no, I kind of came back to my idea. She absolutely nails her. And it's interesting that she won the BAFTA. She won like all the British Film Awards as well. There was a huge hit in Britain. It made like 50 million or something just in Britain alone. Some crazy amount. I just think she's just phenomenal. The voice is absolutely spot on, as you would expect from Meryl Streep. The makeup is excellently done, not like in Albert Nobbs. She looks enough like her that we completely know it's Margaret Thatcher without overdoing it, so we don't still see Meryl Streep in there. The mannerisms, the voice, she's totally let down by the material. The material is just horrific in parts. I mean, so cringe. I've written a whole list of terrible moments, which we'll come to in a minute. That the material let her down at every turn, and especially because they decide to do this whole entire retrospective of her entire career rather than doing there's so many places in Margaret Thatcher's career where you could have done just a year in. You could have done the Falklands War, could have done her rise to become prime minister. You could have done the miners' strike. They could have done her fall from power. And so many moments here, which would have been so much better screenplay as a screenplay for those, rather than this trying to shoehorn everything in with no context at all to any of it. I mean, I lived through it all, so I understand it. But you can completely see people who didn't being like, what's going on now? Where are we? What's going on? The whole ghost of her husband, just appalling. The whole dementia bit, don't need, it's just bad, all round bad. But Meryl is sensation.
Goodness. Wow. Okay. I love your passionate defense. I definitely get that perspective, and I really do respect it. Watching the film again, I can just say I agree that it really doesn't do her many favors in terms of like, okay, yes, she gets plenty of scenes where she gets to be the very imperious Margaret Thatcher, totally chewing the scenery and domineering in her unique way. And we get those quieter moments that I think she's very good in too. But my perspective is I struggle to see this beyond being a very good channeling of Margaret Thatcher, but not really like a well-rounded character or person. I think Roger Ebert said it best for me when he reviewed this film and basically said that like the film doesn't seem to have a super strong perspective on Margaret Thatcher beyond the surface level of like she faced sexism and just like weather the storm of that and then being criticized for her policies. And it seems like the film really sometimes tries to make you feel sorry for her at times, but I never really do. So it's odd. Some of the scenes of like the backlash to her policies feel almost more dutiful because like we have to show this more than what the film actually wants to explore with any nuance. So for me, it's kind of like, sure, it's a pretty good performance. I don't feel particularly enlightened or wowed after seeing it because it doesn't feel like it's in service of anything like substantial, I guess. So it's more me blaming the material than anything, but I definitely struggle with this.
That's all fair. I think the problem for the film makers is that she's such a polarizing figure. She is generally loathed in this country, apart from the people who absolutely adore her. There's kind of no middle ground with Margaret Thatcher. When she died, Ding Dong, the Witch is Dead from The Wizard of Oz went to #1 in the UK.
There you
go. So they're stuck. They're stuck. Do you make a film where you just portray the bad traits? And she had so many bad traits. Just a thoroughly nasty woman in my situation. But having said that, a lot of the stuff she did was necessary. It's not what she did; it's how she did it. That's the real problem with Margaret Thatcher. There was loads of stuff that needed doing, but she didn't really seem to care what the repercussions of them were. As long as she got her way, it was all sort of dogma, and. Mm-hmm. So a filmmaker, that's really hard because you don't want to alienate half the country whichever way you do it. So what they've done is they've done neither, and satisfied nobody. Well, I suppose they managed to satisfy enough people because it was a ginormous hit. But you all come away, whatever your political perspective, you're going to come away thinking they've done a dirty one way or the other. Mm-hmm. The real problem here is that they didn't concentrate on one element, which would have made so much more sense.
I agree.
So you'll constantly have Meryl given a moment which has little context. The scene will be really short because they've got to carry on to the next thing, and so she doesn't really get to properly get her teeth stuck into any particular moment. It could have been a serious film, and it's not a serious film. It's not a serious film. It's got all these kind of like lightweight. There's a dreadful moment. I think one of the worst moments in film history for me is when she's teaching Carol to drive, and
oh my god,
they're driving down this road and the bicycle is on the left-hand side. So Margaret Thatcher starts saying to her daughter, turn right, which is just so ham-fisted, just like she's a right-wing, she's trying to move the country in a right-wing position or something. It's just so dreadful, and all of that undermines what Meryl is doing, which is a really, really, really good interpretation of Margaret Thatcher. But it's hard to come away thinking of Meryl giving a great performance when some of the material she's given to do is just like so naff,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's another thing where like she becomes the education secretary and we see her not being taken seriously as a woman in politics, and largely in the most obvious of ways. Like emphasizing her high heels,
Yeah.
many times, and then just like them cartoonishly laughing at her for like shrieking and screeching and everything there. Like, even if some of this may have been based in truth.
But it's absolutely based in truth. Absolutely,
Yeah.
all of that happened. I mean, her voice changes completely from when she becomes the head of the Conservative Party to when she becomes prime minister. That is all based in truth. But even
Yeah.
that in itself could have been an entire film, about
Yeah.
her rise to power in that way. That'd be super interesting. But it's all done at such a surface level that
Yeah.
it just feels thrown in. Oh, it's 1975. Got to get that in. Let's tick that off,
Hmm.
rather than go into any depth in any of it. So it's and a lot of it's sort of played for comedy, isn't it? A lot of it's sort of played for laughs, and you're just kind
Yeah.
of again undermining the film and undermining her performance by making her do
Hmm.
things that feel kind of cheap,
Yeah.
unnecessarily.
Yeah. Some of it is just like very thuddingly obvious, I think, and very almost like girl boss feminism at
Yeah, yeah.
times, that it takes me out of it, and she can only do so much. Like, sure, it's a very good impression, and I just sort of struggle to see beyond the surface level because it's not often asked of her. And I don't know if this is like a popular opinion or not, but I'm not all that impressed with her as like early prime minister, even Thatcher, or her like before being elected. Like, to me, it's just like she's doing an accent, she's doing Margaret Thatcher, but I think it's like I do still see Meryl in some of those early scenes.
No, I think that's true, but I also think Margaret Thatcher at that point is not defined in our imaginations. We know what
Yeah.
Margaret Thatcher is later on, and she does a really, really good job of giving us that Margaret Thatcher we know. I don't know what Margaret Thatcher is like in
Mm-hmm.
1974,
75. Yeah.
so, whatever it was, the time period before that. I honestly have barely seen any footage of her. There wouldn't be necessarily that much footage of her because there was no reason to be
Yeah.
certain that you're going to see on film. I don't know I know that we know that her voice changed, but I don't particularly know what her voice is before that. And I noticed that as well. There's a real confidence in the performance once she becomes the Margaret Thatcher we all know,
Yeah.
and it does
Yeah.
feel a bit less defined earlier on when we're not sure what was like. There's a
Mm-hmm.
really good BBC drama with Andrea Riseborough called the Long Walk to Finchley. Finchley was Margaret Thatcher's constituency, and it's about what we see a bit of in the film. It's about her becoming a MP in the first place and how she went to Dartford and they like were all the sexism, etc. And it just covers that period. And it's really, really
Mm-hmm.
good. Andrea Rice, first thing I ever saw Andrea Riseborough in like 2008 or something like that, I think. And this is kind of covered in the earlier part here, but I
Yeah.
just wish they'd done that about Falklands or something like that. It would have been just a so much better film rather than trying to um, cram everything in with flashbacks and fast forwards
Mm-hmm.
and ghosts and all the unnecessary nonsense that goes on here, which undermines everything. It's not just her performance; it undermines the entire film.
Yeah, I think it's like it's just way more interested in her in older age, struggling with her sort of becoming less sharp and haunted by her past. So like, yeah, everything in the flashbacks just feels like a highlight reel that we just like
Yeah,
skim
exactly.
through, even though like that's where the compelling material is, honestly.
Yeah.
And like if they were actually interested in it and the nuances of her like as this sort of trailblazing first woman prime minister with the various controversies she faced, and the dichotomy of those two ideas would have been just compelling on its own. I don't know why we need this framing device necessarily.
Absolutely not, and especially because we as viewers know about the other stuff, the recent stuff, the dementia stuff. I mean, it's documented that she did like have a decline in mental health like as she got older, but it still feels like you're just making this up. You're just making this stuff up, and all this other stuff is actually real and properly documented, and this is things we live through. All the doddering around by milk, I just don't care about any of this. Although I think Mel's really good here. I think she's really good in this. I think the makeup's expertly done. I think that she feels like an older lady in decline. It doesn't feel like Meryl Streep playing dress up. Often when you have like people, the old version of something they're playing earlier, it just feels like they plonked a mask on and they're just continuing on as they were before. Meryl is a great actress. Physically, she feels like diminished. So I don't like that bit of the film at all, but I don't blame Meryl for that at all. I think she does absolutely the best she can do in her she does beyond the best she can do in the circumstances. It is interesting though that Meryl Streep gets this role. It's like probably the most or one of the most iconic British women of the past century, and you think there are
Yeah,
plenty of British actresses you would have thought. But it's two things. I think first of all, if Meryl wants to do it, then Meryl gets to do it. That's generally the
that's correct.
generally which other actresses have pointed out. But also,
Hmm.
this film does not make 100 million worldwide with anyone else in the lead, does it? So
Yeah, fair. Yeah. I mean, to speak to those old age scenes, to be actually a little more positive than I have been being, I think her kind of expressing like that one point to her doctor, her frustration with people today being more interested in feelings rather than facts and ideas. There is a perspective there that's interesting, and I think Meryl kind of locks into something there of being someone who is totally focused on what she believes is best for Britain and being frustrated with like all the superficialities of having to speak the right way or like dealing with leaks in her department, talking to the news, and like what she deems like inappropriate or weak or irrelevant, or like all the emotion that's kind of inherent in politics, especially within Parliament. And to be fair, she does show some of her very strong resolve in the face of like intense rebellion to her policies and just trying to like bear the responsibility of all the chaos in the streets with her own personal convictions and just like refusing to back down, but I wish we could delve more into her facing all that beyond a quick montage.
yeah, no, absolutely. The thing about Margaret Thatcher is she's very admirable in many ways. She was a very capable, serious politician, the likes of which we
Mm-hmm.
don't have these days. We've all lived through. You don't get a Donald Trump or a Boris Johnson in Margaret Thatcher's era. So whether you agree with her or not, she was never an embarrassment. Like we've set through in Britain in the last 5 years, and it's just been one embarrassment after another. I was never embarrassed to have her as the figurehead of my country, even if I didn't agree with anything she did or said. And it's a shame that this is this is the biopic that we get, because this is not a serious biopic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I want to talk about two other scenes here that I feel like these scenes are kind of cited a lot as some of the best parts of either the movie or her performance, but the monologue that I'm kind of repulsed by is when she's like talking with the American Secretary of State and she's defending her plan to reclaim the Falkland Islands, and they have this like awful inspirational music underneath it as she's like, I have done battle every single day of my life and many men have underestimated me before. And this whole thing of like, but they will rue the day.
Does it not then undercut all of that by ending with "Shall I be mother"?
Yes, she's like serving the tea. That's like
Yeah,
cutesy little line. And I'm like, what exactly are we doing here?
yeah.
It's like,
The weird thing is that like Meryl Streep surely must know this and had enough power in that situation to be like, guys, this doesn't work.
I know.
It just feels odd that she wouldn't have like thought, do
Yeah.
I have to do this? This is really, really naff. Shall I be mother made me switch you,
Yeah.
doesn't it? It's
Cringe.
such a
Yeah.
bad and such a poorly positioned point. We've had this big rousing speech, and she's been a serious leader, and we're talking about people dying, and then we get cut to this like it's a funny quippy giggle sort of,
Yeah.
and it just feels really out of place.
It's like the girl boss thing again
Yeah,
that just like irks me. Yeah.
no, yeah, totally agree.
And then the whole like concessions speech, I think, is horrifically directed and edited with like 185 cuts in like this 4-minute scene of just like her at the table and talking about making the case about like not wanting to make concessions and not wanting to do handouts and like making the tax code fair, like that whole thing.
Well, they're trying to like get in her whole philosophy
Yeah.
in like 2 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
um,
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's also that terrible scene near the end where Geoffrey Howe, who was her like sort of right hand man, he was her longest serving minister, where she tells him off like he's a school child,
Yeah.
and that's supposedly what got him to resign. Now, there's maybe some truth in that, but I guarantee you it didn't go like that. She literally talks to this man who's in his 60s, who has been every head of state. He's been at home secretary and all these things, and she sort of tells him off like he's the junior at the apprentice at the thing, and it just doesn't ring true at all. It's so everything's so on the nose in this movie. It's like everything is like so, there's no subtlety at all anywhere, is there? Just in case you didn't get something, we're going to hammer it home to you. I'm not defending this film.
Yeah.
I'm not defending this film in the slightest.
Yeah, but I mean, in the end, we see her kind of, I guess, like accepting her husband's death and allowing the ghost to move on. Question mark, which is I think is a good scene for her individually, but like I don't really care about this relationship at all. So like the way it ties everything together is like, okay, so is this really about like valuing her relationship with her husband? Like, if I'm being very generous, I would guess that the idea here is like she's accepted like feelings as just as valuable as fact. But like
maybe
I don't know.
Yeah, I didn't get that. That sounds
feels like a stretch, but yeah.
Yeah, but this is Villa de Law. I genuinely consider Mamma Mia to be the worst film that's ever been made in the entire history of cinema. Wow. That's not to say it.
Fighting words.
I went to my brother and myself, my brother and two friends went to see it in the cinema, and on the opening weekend or something, and we laughed our way through because we were laughing at it. Because it was so terrible, yeah. And it was only halfway through the film, my brother says to me, they're actually laughing with it. They think it's funny. And we were like, oh my, it hadn't occurred to me. I thought everyone was in on the joke. I thought everyone was laughing at it as bad as we were. And the woman next to my brother, when it finished, she just turned around and randomly said to me, wasn't that wonderful? And Jodie says, no, it wasn't. It was absolute shit. He said that. He was so angry.
Wow.
Yeah, and Mamma Mia was an absolutely atrocious film made by the same woman who made this, right?
Yeah, visionary auteur, Philida Lloyd.
Sometimes watch something, you think, oh, I'm not a film director, but I could have done a better job than this, Just like every single decision is like bungled in both these films. Absolutely dreadful.
I definitely, again, like I definitely blame a lot of the film on my feelings on this performance, but I just don't really see the depth that I'm hoping for personally from the performance, because maybe she's not allowed to reach that. Like, great impression, but I don't really see much beyond that. She has her moments.
Yeah, fair. I just think it's better than an impression. It's like, to me, it's sort of startling, how spot on it is.
And it's different for me, different generation, not in Britain.
No,
so
100%. That makes perfect sense, But I genuinely felt at times that like you're sort of watching. It's just little like mannerisms and things she does. There's also every single Meryl Streep performance has a couple of like Meryl Streepisms. She can't get it. She can't help it. There's an eye roll thing. There's a hand wave thing she does, and you see whoever she's playing, she always does this, which I kind of love picking them out when I see. But it's just other little things that she does, which are so Margaret Thatcher. Just like the way she holds herself, just the way she sort of juts at her. It's just so many like moments in there were just so spot on Margaret Thatcher, and I really like the way they made her look like Margaret Thatcher, but not so much like Margaret Thatcher that you sort of got distracted by it, I just think she's
that's fair.
Just think she's great here in a terrible film.
Sometimes that can happen. As we always say, it is best actress, not best actress in a great film.
Yeah.
So,
and thank God, because like when best actresses in great films don't often get to go together, do they?
Not a lot of overlap, sadly. But let's get to the next segment here, where we will discuss why Meryl won. So, for the Critics Awards, Meryl won the New York Film Critics Award and a handful of others. Viola Davis didn't really win too much. Glenn Close didn't win anything. I think Rooney Mara won like a Critics Award or two, but not too much. This surprised me to learn, actually, looking back, but Michelle Williams actually won quite a few of those Critics Awards, like Boston, Chicago, Washington, and Toronto.
I didn't that.
Yeah, she did like surprisingly well. Yeah.
That's so odd, because usually that doesn't feel like the sort of performance that's going to win critics awards. You can totally see the Golden Globe comedy. She won the Golden Globe comedy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. But usually, if you're not going to go with the sort of front runner, big um,
Hmm.
slam dunk Best Actress winner, you're going to go for something obscure in these situations. And I would have definitely thought this was more sort of Tilda Swinton territory, but we'll come to that in a minute, I'm sure.
Yeah, Tilda did win quite a few, but yeah. But for major awards, it was quite an exciting race. Viola, Meryl, and Michelle were nominated everywhere. Glenn got in at Globes and SAG, so she was more or less trailing those three. And then Rooney only got in at the Golden Globes. Not Critics' Choice, not SAG, not BAFTA, and still made it in at the Oscars. As far as wins, though, it was a split race where Viola won Critics' Choice. Meryl and Michelle won the 2 Golden Globes. Whether we think My Week with Marilyn is a comedy or musical, that is up for debate, but, Viola won SAG and Meryl won BAFTA, so it was not one of these lazy sweeper years. So kind of all over the place, but why do we think Meryl won this Oscar over this competition?
Meryl won this Oscar the minute the poster was revealed. At no point,
Okay.
no point from the minute I saw that poster did I think Meryl Streep was not winning this Oscar. And I'm a bit bemused by when people were outraged at the win or thought it was a shock win or like were convinced Viola was going to win. Meryl Streep won this in an absolute landslide. It wasn't even close. And and it's just not just because I like, even if I hated the performance, I mean, this was
Yeah.
an absolute slam dunk. Meryl Streep playing Margaret Thatcher. Which bit of that is not the baitiest of Ox debate you've ever come across? The minute we saw that poster, we saw that what a great transformation they'd done. It could not be more Oscar baity if you tried. And adding into the fact that how many times has she lost at this point in a row? So she won 82, 83, 83, 85, 87, 88, 90, 95, 98, 99, 2002, 2006, 2008. She'd lost 12 times in a row.
Yeah. There you go.
So while she was saying earlier about like the Glenn narrative got almost completely forgotten about, because she hadn't been nominated in 23 years, Meryl had lost 12 times in that thing. And also the general consensus that Meryl Streep deserved another Oscar at some point, and they often, when that happens, the narrative doesn't quite follow through, as we've seen with Glenn. There's been a couple of times since where they could have done that narrative, it doesn't come through, something goes wrong, the film doesn't, whatever it might be. Here was an absolute prime opportunity to give Meryl Streep her third Oscar. And as we've discussed, the competition is not great. So whether you think she deserves it or not, you can't argue with people voting for Meryl Streep when there's not a clear-cut, obvious, there's not a clear-cut other person to give it to. If there had been a very, very definite other person to give it to, there may have been some. No, there was no competition. It wasn't even close. They all won in a landslide.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I went back and looked at predictions from like early 2012, and just about every article from every reputable site was betting on Viola Davis as the winner, especially after SAG and her having this big emotional speech there, plus the cast winning SAG Ensemble. It was a beloved film, got into Best Picture, She did have some things in her favor and definitely a rooting interest and a narrative in like making her the second Black Best Actress winner. Honestly, Viola did have some momentum, but I think what tipped the scales in Meryl's favor is just pretty much what you said already, so I don't want to repeat myself there. Just the showiness of the performance, plus right on paper, Meryl Streep playing Margaret Thatcher, the initial image, it's Daniel Day-Lewis playing Lincoln.
Yeah,
it's like,
exactly.
okay, it's right there. Yeah. So, and she dominates her movie. We talked about it in our discussion, but like Viola is great, but she doesn't dominate her film. Yes, there are like, exceptions like with Reese Witherspoon or like Kate Winslet maybe not being in every scene of their films either, but both of them were like A-list stars by that point.
Yeah,
so I think that was a little different. Yeah. But I think one of the main factors is that Meryl did have the Weinstein machine behind her. And I imagine, the older set in the Academy especially may have tipped the scales in favor of Meryl, especially people who went through the Thatcher era themselves. And this is also such a big era for biopic performances winning. So, all that helps a lot. Weinstein did also have My Week with Marilyn. I'm guessing they maybe would have been more aggressive with campaigning Michelle if she had more of a shot, but yeah, I think all those are factors on top of what you said.
Yeah, but they definitely pushed hard on the kind of it's time thing, didn't they? Like it's been
Yes.
this many years. And I suppose the other thing is people, we're Oscar nerds. We know this kind of stuff. There'd be so many people who wouldn't have even realized that at the time. They would have
Right.
thought, oh, Meryl Streep, she's won loads of times. Or,
Yeah. I'm always seeing her up on stage accepting
exactly,
something.
yeah, exactly. So people are like, what, really? She hasn't won in my lifetime. She hasn't won since 1982.
Hmm.
Which is genuinely shocking when you think of the stature of Meryl Streep, how she has been the preeminent actress of her generation for like 40
Yeah.
with no competition. This isn't like a Catherine F and Betty Davis situation where you can argue. Like she has had since literally the early 80s, she has been regarded as the greatest actress of her generation. And to win two in such close proximity, and then that's why she didn't, a bit like, Betty Davis, if she hadn't won those two almost like within 3 years of each other in 1935 and 38, she would have won others going forward, wouldn't she?
Hmm.
And because Meryl had won them in 4 years apart, the idea is, oh, she's got enough. And then it comes to the point where like, oh, hold on, that it's been 30 years. So yeah,
Yeah.
there's too many things going in her favor. And I at the time remember being really thinking everyone's at no point did I ever think Viola Davis was going to win. Didn't I? Just was like, and it really confused me when people were insisting she was going to, and then acted shocked when she didn't. That was the thing that like really got me. We were actually,
Yeah.
oh, it was a surprise. It was a shock win. Like Meryl Streep playing Margaret Thatcher is not a shock win. And when you consider also she won New York Film Critics and BAFTA. They're like as
Yeah. Right.
that covers both. That covers like the critics on one hand, and you've got the closest voting body to the
Hmm.
Oscars on the other. So it's like it didn't seem close to me.
Yeah, that's fair. I also really enjoy her speech. I don't know how many times you've watched that speech of hers at the Oscars, but it's really lovely.
Yeah, I'm not someone who goes back to watch his speeches really, other than Geraldine Page's. The
Okay.
doesn't she say she starts off by saying something? I'm well aware that I'm never going to be up here again, or something. She says, doesn't she?
Yes.
So bear
Yeah.
with me. Yeah,
Yeah. She does a whole bit of being like, as soon as I heard my name, I could hear half of America, like being like, oh, her again. But whatever.
she's really, really good with speeches. She really is because
She's so good at her
yeah,
speech.
she,
Yeah.
she is really self-aware. Um,
Yeah.
did you ever see what was it for? She collects a BAFTA. Is it for adaptation? She collects she's in London at the BAFTAs and she collects the BAFTA. I think who wrote adaptation?
Charlie Kaufman.
Charlie Kaufman. I think Charlie Kaufman's given her a speech to read, and so she gets up there and reads it. But the speech is all about how wonderful Meryl Streep is. So she has to read a speech basically talking. And I don't know if it was rehearsed or not. She's such a good actress, you don't know. But she completely pulls it off as if she's the first time she's ever read this thing, and she's playing it all like it's just brilliant. It's so good.
That's funny.
I kind of feel like she hadn't read it, but if she had read it, then she does an absolute master job of acting like she hadn't.
Yeah. And she also has this lovely little comment about her makeup artist or her hairstylist, I don't remember which, them finally winning an Oscar. And they had been working together every film since Sophie's Choice.
Right?
So,
Oh, wow.
yeah. So, a nice crowning achievement. She was in gold. She looked incredible. I feel like she was dressed to win. You know how sometimes like actresses are like, okay, this is going to be my moment. Let's be honest.
Yeah, but that wearing gold and dress to win doesn't always come off, does it?
Well, you don't have to tell me twice.
As we found a few years later.
I know. I think we can get to these questions here. We got quite a few.
Now, I saw these questions a few days ago, and I was going through them and coming up with some answers, etc. And then I totally lost them, so I could no longer find where they were. So I've
Okay.
probably got answers for a few of them, and then others I'm going to struggle. But let's go.
That's fine. I can take them if you struggle. Fritz said, "Is this one of the biggest great actresses in bad movies ever?" As in biggest lineups of that or something. Yeah, I think a word is missing in there, but yeah, like we kind of said it at the top. Incredible list of actresses. If you don't look at like the next piece of information of what they were nominated for, it's like, wow, love them all.
Yeah, this is a slightly odd bad actress lineup because often bad actress lineups are full of like filler. You know, they've put people in
Right.
who shouldn't be nowhere near there because there was nothing else to fill it up, like 94, 75. It's just like, what on earth? And there's no one in here that's like, "Oh, what the fuck are they doing here?" Nomination or big actresses in pretty high profile films that make sense as nominees. That doesn't mean that they are good films or great performances. There, but there's no like,
Right.
there's no Anne Margaret rolling around in baked beans here, you know.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, that was.
Movies and tennis said, "We're now into the Oscar period where the preferential ballot for Best Picture. This is probably the closest race since that change happened in 2009. If the preferential ballot were used in this race, what would the result be?"
If we had preferential voting
In
Best
this
Actress,
category.
what would the
Yeah,
result have been?
I guess so. Yeah.
In the Meryl Streep won in a landslide.
um, yeah, I think it would be close. I mean, like, The Iron Lady was divisive as a
Yeah.
film, so that may have affected her chances a little bit in terms of like a lot of people ranking Meryl a little low. But yeah, I do think Meryl probably still wins in the end. Handsome said, "Do you think the narrative surrounding Meryl Streep not winning an Oscar since 1983, Sophie's Choice, helped her win for The Iron Lady?" Yes.
Absolutely.
Pretty obviously. Yeah. It's something we've been talking about since like Devil Wears Prada. Like, it was just this building feeling of it being, this is like the peak period of this stage of Meryl's career.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. Sean, I already know your answer to this question because they said, "Do you think this is Meryl's worst nomination so far?"
Obviously not. Her worst nomination at this point, she doesn't. I don't think there's any bad performances. I don't think Meryl Streep gives bad performances as such. She's not always in great material, and I think that's the problem with her. Really, that's the problem where people get annoyed with her, because they feel like she just gets like given a nomination for any old shit, which is true. You know, we did not need a nomination for One True Thing or Music of the Heart or the one which is the opera singer. What's that called? Uh,
Florence Foster
Last Foster
Jenkins.
Jenkins. Yeah. So
Yeah.
these weren't necessary Oscar nominations. They're just flimsy and
Yeah.
unnecessary. But she doesn't give bad performances in them. They're just like there would have been more interesting people to give nominations to that year. Yeah, I don't think she's bad in this. So no, not at all. Certainly think it's a better performance than in Julie and Julia, for example, which feels a bit hammy. Yeah, but no, I think all the Post is a very odd nomination. It feels like there's so much to do there, and she doesn't really get to grips with it. But it's really odd, isn't it? That's her last nomination, isn't it? She feels like she's sort of given up on. She doesn't really. She's made nothing of note since, has she? She feels like she's just enjoying herself now. I mean, I always say good luck to you. You know, if she wants if she wants to do TV, do TV. If she wants to do musicals, do musicals. Meryl, knock yourself out. Do whatever you want to do from now on. I don't care. It's not like you don't need Oscar nominations, but it does feel slightly odd because she's kind of like she can do anything she likes now, and you think there may be some kind of pet project or something she would want to do, but she feels like she wants to make a Ryan Murphy musicals. Go for it.
Why not? Yeah. My worst Meryl nomination for her would be The French Lieutenant's Woman, personally.
Oh.
I just don't get much of anything from that, unfortunately.
See, I did The French Lieutenant Woman as A-level English, and so I remember I probably haven't seen the film since I did that, which is getting on for 30 years ago. She does this interesting thing that was not interesting, but she does this thing in The French Lieutenant's Woman where she has an absolutely perfect British accent, like a flawless British accent, but it's such a flawless British accent, nobody in Britain speaks like that. It's like
I see.
Every cadence is correct, but there's no hint of where in Britain she comes from. It feels like someone who has learnt an accent by rote rather than actually. It's quite distracting for a Brit listening to it because every single syllable is correct, but overall it just doesn't come together as an actual accent I've ever heard anyone have.
Yeah. Adam said, "Do you think even Meryl likes this win/movie?"
I'm sure she doesn't mind the win. She seemed very happy, and also she was out there campaigning for it. It's not like she.
Oh yeah.
So she was definitely out there campaigning for it. Yeah, I think you can be. It's odd because she went back. She did Mamma Mia, which was a huge success, but she must have known it wasn't a very good film. And it's odd that she would then go and do The Iron Lady. Presumably, she would have had directorial approval or something. Um, and you feel like there's often a criticism of Meryl, isn't it, that she doesn't take risks. She doesn't like work with the best directors, and she doesn't like to do
Yeah.
too many takes and things. It's said, isn't it? So
Hmm.
maybe it was comfortable for her doing this. Maybe she has more power on the set with a less creditable director. Yeah, I don't know. It's hard for us to say, isn't it? I honestly don't know the answer to that.
Yeah.
Maybe she's
I
very
don't
happy.
know. I'm sure she's happy with the win. I think she's proud of her performance. I don't know how she feels about the movie.
Yeah, that to be fair, and I say
Yeah.
I feel like she's very self-aware. So I mean, there's probably
Oh yeah, I
very
think so.
very strategic in there. I'm sure she knew. I'm sure she knew what she was doing.
Yeah. Christoph said, "Why did Meryl Streep even want to play Margaret Thatcher? Their politics certainly don't align. Did she just want a third Oscar more badly than she told us?"
I don't know why
Sassy
your
question.
politics. If I don't know why your politics would need to align with playing what is potentially a great role. That's never been a thing, is it? People don't play roles because their politics align. I don't think. I think there could
Well, I
be.
think actors today are maybe starting to take that into consideration,
Uh,
considering how people are on the internet.
I
But
think
yeah,
that the issue there would be that not the role itself, but like the politics of the film are very wishy-washy. And so I can imagine
yeah,
that you, as an actor, would say, I really want to play this role, but it needs to be done in a different way. But I think the politics are wishy-washy enough that you're not really taking a side here. You know, there is no
right.
it's almost politics free in some ways. You know, it's like it's kind of not saying anything about anything, is it? So I can't
That's
imagine.
the problem.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely 100% the problem. Yeah, but as a
yeah.
role, I can't imagine why anyone wouldn't have taken it on. You know.
Yeah, I mean, she said in interviews she just really liked the challenge of it. She liked the idea of even playing a contentious figure. I think it just fascinated her. That's it.
Yeah.
You know? Jack Mahane said, "Do you think a factor in Streep's win not being overall well received today is because Gillian Anderson did the role a lot better in The Crown?"
No.
Okay. Asked and answered.
The
I
reason
don't think it's,
the reason I say that is
yeah,
it was not well received for 10 years before Gillian Anderson did it in the ground. You know, so I don't think it's like
yeah,
suddenly people in the last couple of years have suddenly decided they dislike the performance. I think they disliked
right.
that a long time ago. I think the reason people have a real aversion these days to anything that kind of transformative performances, especially if you're playing a real person. It almost doesn't matter what the performance is, whether it's a good or bad performance. People immediately get their hackles up, like be it Freddie Mercury
Hmm.
or Winston Churchill, or what other ones that we had recently. Even like the whale, which isn't a real person, but like the minute people see that makeup go on, they start saying that someone is doing a it's if it's not proper acting, and I kind of
Yeah,
that happens a lot, but I don't think it's inherent that just because someone does a transformative performance, especially as a real person, then it's a bad performance. Sometimes they are, but
yeah.
like often they're not, and I don't think people give it a chance. I think people almost like jump on a bandwagon immediately to say it's not real acting, and that kind of bothers me.
Hmm. Yeah. I think those two performances are not really even compared all that much from what I've seen. So like I don't know. It's so I think it's just a lot of people don't like the Iron Lady
Yeah,
itself, and that's the biggest issue.
yeah.
Fritz said Meryl and Ingrid Bergman won 2 Best Actress and 1 Supporting Actress Oscar. Whose wins do you prefer overall?
Uh, Meryl's by a mile. I love Ingrid Bergman. She's wonderful. I think her her three acting wins are all borderline bad to very bad.
It's definitely Meryl for me. Yeah, because Kramer versus Kramer and Sophie's Choice are all timers in their
Agreed.
categories, honestly.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Ingrid, if you change Ingrid's wins, then that would be
yeah.
fine. If she'd been nominated and won for Casablanca, no one's going to complain about that, are they?
Hmm.
If she'd won for Autumn Sonata, which is my winner in
That's the
'78,
one.
then
Yep.
absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
But she's not bad in Murder on the Orient Express. It's just a very very silly role, and like it's an absolute nothing role that
Yep.
certainly didn't deserve an Oscar. I think she's genuinely bad in Anastasia. Could not believe it the last time I saw that film. I hadn't remembered it that way at all. And I think that Gaslight is just a tricky thing to pull off because the plot is so kind of preposterous, and she just has to play such an idiot that it's really hard to sort of root for her because It's. I remember years ago when I first saw Gaslight back in the 90s. Myself, my brother, and my friend Emma, who we lived with at the time, we'd all watch it on TV. And then in our house, it became like a running joke to move people's stuff. So we'd all watch Gaslight, and then someone would move your like keys, whatever it, and then sort of where are my keys? And everyone would go, "Oh, you're going mad! You're going mad!" Because it's a running joke. We did it for months. We go, "Oh, like," and then the other two would gang up on the one who'd like the thing and to gaslight them, which wasn't a word, wasn't
Just
it?
gaslighting each other. Love it.
We kind of invented gaslighting back then. Yeah.
Love it.
And it's always sort of stuck with me that every time I see that film now, that whole kind of like, we used to say to you, "Oh, you must be going mad," and that's kind of how Ingrid Bergman is. I think it's just kind of a bit of a silly performance. So yeah, Meryl,
I like it.
Meryl all the way.
I like Ingrid in Gaslight. I don't care for her in Anastasia, and especially not in Murder on the Orient Express. I think those are not particularly good wins. So there you go. Kind of by default, it's Meryl.
But also, they're wins that were not won for the performance. Both of those wins are not won for the right reasons, and that's always. You've got to stick to if the Academy stuck to its guns and voted for the actual wins would sort themselves out in time. When you rush to give someone a different reason, you mess up the karma going forward, and it kind of ruins everything. So many things could have been resolved by just voting for the best performance the first time round and not letting other things get in the way.
Yeah. Joey Gentili said, Meryl wore gold and it matched her win. Why since then is wearing gold such a curse? This is a very triggering question.
So obviously Glenn did that. Are there others that other people?
Actually in 2020, Andra Day and Carey Mulligan both wore gold. Neither of them won, obviously. Yeah, I don't know if there's others though.
It does feel kind of presumptuous, doesn't it? It's a bit of an odd thing to do. I totally get Glenn doing it. I think that's kind of iconic, and Glenn doing it didn't kind of work. But like to wear gold to win your little gold man feels, and also it just doesn't look that good on. I think you need to have a different colour to offset the award. Yeah, don't wear gold. Don't wear gold, ladies or gentlemen.
Yeah, we've learned our lesson, hopefully. Andy Bayless said, I know it's controversial, but I love that Meryl won an Oscar in a year where I was following the Oscars. What is the win before your Oscar time that you wish you'd watched as it happened?
Oh, that's such a good question. Obviously, my Oscar time goes back a very long time. So we're talking that it's going to have to be in the 70s or before. So it's not necessarily one that I don't necessarily need to be the one I love. I was just thinking, what would be the biggest jaw dropper of all time? Maybe Best Actress 68 would have been an absolute jaw dropper, wouldn't it?
That's what I said.
Yeah.
That's mine. Yeah.
Maybe.
I would have loved to live through the tie. It's a tie. Yes.
Yeah. And also Babs's pajama outfit. And
yes.
Yeah. Just the whole thing just feels iconic. So maybe that's the one that would have been the absolute jaw dropper. I think the one at my time is obviously pardon me, it's Glenn lives into Olivia. That's the jaw dropper of my lifetime, I think. But maybe the tie. Is there another absolutely shocking win in any category? Is there anyone that's just?
Crash winning Best Picture over Brokeback Mountain was a shocker.
Yeah, but we lived through that. I'm just thinking that
I know.
Is there some back in the day that were like, oh my God. The other one that's supposedly at the time, it doesn't quite have the same sort of intense meaning as it does these days. But I think Loretta Young winning in 47 was an absolute shocker. Yeah. She was generally thought to be like fourth or fifth, wasn't she? And beats her best friend. So that would have been a big shock to be there. Apparently, the story goes was people leaving because it was a foregone conclusion that she was, and then they all came rushing back in to when she won. So but no, I think 68 is the one that would be like.
I think so.
It's history-making one. You want to be there, isn't it?
Corey Zimmerman said Streep appeared on the Mike Huckabee Show on Fox News, hosted by the former Arkansas governor, to stump for the Iron Lady. I can only imagine this was Weinstein's doing. Was this the furthest or most off-kilter he ever went to influence an Oscar win?
That is utterly bizarre, isn't it?
Yeah.
Utterly bizarre. Again, Meryl Streep is in a position to say no to anything she likes, and she's certainly in a position to say no to Harvey Weinstein. Not many people were, but Meryl Streep definitely was. And why she would, on so many levels, Fox News, Mike Huckabee, and what's it got to do with the? It's not like there's a clear a clear reason for her to be on that show in particular about the Iron Lady. Yeah, it's all utterly bizarre. And
Yep.
I'm really would like to ask Meryl Streep that answer. If someone can get an answer from Meryl Streep for that, would be much appreciated.
Yeah, I didn't even know that this happened, and I was
No.
upset to learn this. So thanks, Corey.
Wonder if it's on YouTube. We have to look that up because it's
Maybe,
just
yeah.
so
Yeah.
utterly against everything that we believe in.
Yep. Look Home and Diego both want to know, if Meryl didn't win for the Iron Lady, would she have won for any of her subsequent nominations that she got?
Because here it's not as easy as just saying like, oh, she would have won for that film. You have to each. This is what annoys me when people say, oh, something happened this year, so this proof it's that didn't happen another year. Every year is different. You know, you've got to look at the actual nominees. So 13, no.
And the dynamics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So 13, no one was beating Kate Blanchett is 13, isn't she? So yeah, that wasn't happening. She wasn't winning for
Into the Woods.
The Woods. Who wins that year?
No.
Is that
That's Patricia Arquette.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm not big on that win, but Meryl Streep wasn't winning for that. She wasn't winning for Florence Foster Jenkins in these circumstances, I don't think. And 90% certain she wasn't winning for The Post either. This is what I mean when like this, everything comes together in this moment.
I know.
We've got the 20 years, we've got the 12 losses, we've got the total, possibly the most Oscar bait of Oscar bait that's ever been given to us. You know, this is why it all comes together, and I feel like the Academy, whatever you think of the nomination, I feel like the Academy does the right thing at this moment because it then takes it off the table. We're not doing a Glenn Close with still like, oh, why hasn't Meryl won again? It's over, it's done. It's possible. I wouldn't put it past Meryl Streep winning again, you know, probably in supporting maybe in 10 years' time or something. It's not out of the question, but we're not obsessing over it, are we? Because it's been put to bed. So I feel like almost like the Academy did us a favour, whatever you think of that performance. We don't have to do this every cycle, you know.
Wow. Yeah.
So yeah. I don't really see the circumstance in which she wins for any of those. Do you?
No, I don't. Like, oddly enough, The Post seems like the most likely, but I also can't quite see her winning for that.
No.
So
what was that? 17, is that?
17. Yeah.
That's Frances McDormand, right?
Frances.
Yeah. She wasn't beating her, so.
Well, Fritz said, cast a top-tier Hollywood actress in a Liz Truss biopic.
Oh, God. Okay, I don't think it can be a top-tier Hollywood actress. I think it needs to be a British character actress, really, isn't it? Because, oh, no, hold on.
Yeah.
Olivia Colman could do this, can't she?
I mean, that seems like a lazy answer, but yes.
Yeah, I'm probably going to be lazy. Firstly, because Olivia Colman could do anything. But just putting an American actress, a top tier American actress, just makes absolutely no sense. It's Liz Truss is so parochially British. It's also bargain basement. The whole story is also tacky and trashy, and like it will be not anytime soon. There will be a British TV like drama about those called Liz and the Lettuce or something. It'll be called, and like it will be a kind of semi-comedy thing with a British comedy actress playing it. And now that I'm writing this in my head, I'm really looking forward to it. But yeah, I don't want Emma Stone playing the role.
Emma Stone. I don't know why, when I was just like looking at like imagery of Liz Truss, I could just see like a Joan Allen like in her prime doing something like that.
Yeah, Joan Allen's a good call, but I think Joan Allen's probably like getting on with
so
15 years old.
It's tough.
Yeah.
Diego said, this is Glenn's first nomination since the 80s. Why did this happen? Would you give her any nomination in between? You kind of mentioned earlier, like there wasn't a lot of Oscar talk to begin with in between these two. So
no, so there was Oscar talk of in 1990 for
Reversal of Fortune.
Reversal of Fortune, yeah. So she was thought to be possibly for supporting for that, and it didn't happen. And then after that, there's some projects which seemed good on paper, like House of
the Spirits.
Have you seen the House of the Spirits?
I have not, but I've heard a lot about it.
Great book, fantastic book. Isabel Allende is a brilliant writer. Like such a good book. Possibly the worst cast film in movie history. I mean, every single thing. I remember when he got
that has Meryl in it too.
It does, absolutely. But they're supposed to be like Chilean, you know. It's like the joke at the time was like they couldn't have found like three like or more like whiter women to play these. It was just awful. There was talk obviously
Yeah.
before that. It was a really prestige film,
Hmm.
But other than that, I mean, you could definitely put her in for something like it would never happen, but something like 101 Dalmatians would have been,
That's yeah.
that kind of thing would be great.
That's the obvious.
But that's never ever going to happen, is it? So
Hmm.
other than that, I honestly can't think of a single thing that was even under consideration in all of that time. And what happened was, it was clear to see what happened. She was over knocking 40. That's what happened.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Other than Meryl and Susan Sarandon, that's literally the only two real survivors from that generation who carry on into the
Hmm.
90s untouched, because everyone else kind of like begins to disappear, don't they?
Yeah. I think if you kick out Diane Keaton and Marvin's Room and put in Glenn for 101 Dalmatians, we got ourselves a category. I'll say that. And not that I would have nominated her, but I also think she is genuinely great in The Stepford Wives. Just saying.
I've never seen that, but this is exactly what I mean. So there's Glenn Close, a big star, and then she's like 15 years later or something, starring or not starring,
Yeah.
co-starring as a supporting role
Hmm.
in the Stepford Wives movie. That's
Yeah.
this is why
Right.
this
Yeah.
is why she wasn't in Oscar consideration in that time, is it? Because this is what happens to
Yeah.
great
Yeah.
great female women in Hollywood.
Hmm.
Before the option of TV came around, which
Right.
Glenn Close basically
Which
invented.
Glenn
So, yeah,
pioneered.
exactly.
Yes. Yes.
Well done, Glenn.
Yeah. Captain Jimmy D said, if Meryl and Glenn switched roles, do you think Glenn could have won for playing Margaret Thatcher, considering the Academy's obsession with actors portraying real life figures?
Yes, absolutely. Because
I agree.
yeah,
I agree.
she even like she doesn't look like her, but they both Meryl and Glenn, they don't look alike, but they've got similar. They're both
Yeah.
like great looking without being like beautiful looking. They're both. And Margaret Thatcher's quite specific looking as well, isn't she? They both could easily be done up very well to look like Margaret Thatcher. Glenn Close
Totally.
can absolutely do a perfect British accent when she wants to. She didn't for some reason.
Hmm.
And Meryl would have been equally terrible in Albert Nobbs. So
Correct. Yeah.
she may have even been worse actually, because
Yeah.
Glenn at least can do reserved. Meryl doesn't really do reserved. Meryl's still going to be, the hands are still going to be going on, the eyes are still going to be rolling. There's going to be a lot going on, which suits Meryl Streep because the character she plays doesn't really do reserved that often. So yeah, Meryl would have been dreadful in Albert Nobbs, whereas Glenn could have pulled off Margaret Thatcher. Does that make sense?
Agreed. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, cool.
And I think she could. There's something about Glenn where she is not afraid to play like difficult women, quote unquote, that I think she really could lend herself to
Yeah,
Margaret Thatcher very well.
100%.
Christoph said, be honest, isn't it sometimes hard to be a Glenn Close super fan? It sure is. And especially painful knowing this was her passion project, and I just
That
struggle to
really brings into
connect to
question her taste levels, doesn't it?
I didn't even mention before, like, she is a actor on this. She is a active producer. She is a co-songwriter of the end credits song sung by Sinead O'Connor. Like, very active in the making of Albert Nobbs.
Yeah, it's just a shame she didn't cast someone else in the middle.
Yeah. Stephen John said, where does this nomination rank in Glenn's 8 nominations?
I was going to say last, but no, it's 7th, isn't it? Because I think we can all agree that Hillbilly Elegy is probably number 8.
Not for me.
Oh, okay. Also, I mean, depends when you're talking bad nominations or unnecessary nominations, because The Natural is also
That's what I would have 8th, because there's just nothing there.
to it. Yeah, okay. So we can put the natural 8th. I think I would put Hillbilly Elegy as 7th, Albert Nobbs as 6th. Then I haven't seen The Big Chill in such a long time that I've got no memory of it whatsoever, so that can go 5th. I would put what was oh no, The Wife can go. Oh, The Wife's a bit meh. Yeah, not sure about the others, but Dangerous Liaisons is my clear cut number 1, and Fatal Attraction is my clear cut number 2.
Yeah, that's clear. Joey Gentili said, would Glenn have finally won for Albert Nobbs had it been in the song category? There were only 2 nominees this year.
Yeah, there are,
for the
aren't
record,
they? That's right, yeah.
which is so weird. Yeah. This would have been for Lay Your Head Down, sung by Sinead O'Connor, co-written by Glenn. Maybe.
I mean, that actually makes sense. Now, the reason there'll be 2 is because there wasn't enough there's a, it's sort of sliding scale of nominations depending on how many get put forward. Is that how
How
it
many
works?
submissions?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
how many few submissions would you have to only end up with two nominations? That's really low, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's actually a really, really good point, and it's a shame
Hmm.
that she probably would have won because the one that won is from the Muppet movie. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man or Muppet from
Yeah,
the
yeah.
Muppets.
I
Yeah.
mean, Man or Muppet from the Muppet movie did not win. I don't know this song, but I'm guarantee right now it did not need an Oscar. Would I be right in saying that? And
Yeah.
not that the song from Albert Nobbs is a particular memorable one, but if that was on the nomination, and people knew it was getting close, you can definitely see them giving it an Oscar.
Absolutely. How weird would that have been
But
just for history?
yeah, but
Glenn Close's Oscar.
then it'd be used in ever more after that to say, oh, she's got one. We don't need to give her
Yeah,
another
it's
one.
true.
So, yeah, this is how it works.
Yeah. Steve, no, not that Steve, the other one, said 3 out of 4 of Davis's nominations come for films that feature prominent scenes of her crying. What other actresses have received as many Oscar noms or more as Davis for films with famous crying scenes? Please note, this does not include run-of-the-mill crying. Very specific question.
I think not that she has many of them, but that the most famous Oscar-winning crying scene, I think, and this is just because I'm old or my mind immediately goes back to old, is Louise Reiner in The Great Ziegfeld. The telephone scene
Yeah.
where she's crying is genuinely great. You know, she's just fantastic in it, and she does that fabulous 1930s crying where she cries but looks absolutely beautiful whilst doing so. You know,
Yes, glamorous crying.
Yes, glamorous crying. Yeah, there's no huge breakdown, is there? Who else has big crying scenes?
I mean, doesn't Meryl have quite a few, like Sophie's Choice, kind of in the end, and Kramer versus Kramer, I think, in Doubt. She has such doubts.
She has such doubts. Yeah, she does. But it's so interesting that this is what I was talking about earlier about Viola Davis and like those first three nominations I'm not keen on. And it's really funny that an actress of her stature, we all can agree when people say that, we're like, oh yes, she was known for the bubble of snot in her nose in Doubt. I mean, that's just gone down in history, and that's not even the acting, really. That's just like that's natural. She was doing such a good job.
That's bodily functions.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, completely. But like, I feel like when you're talking about an actress and a snot bubble is what is what first comes to mind. You know? But yeah, that's genuinely my problem with those first three nominations of Viola Davis. I feel like she's not being allowed to be anything other than like a downtrodden domestic. It just feels wrong. Yeah.
Jeffrey Kerr said, had Viola Davis won for The Help, how do you think she personally would have felt about that win, given her regrets in taking on the role of a maid in a white savior movie?
I think she would have felt exactly the way that we all would feel.
Yeah.
Yeah. I every time I hear people say like, oh, Viola Davis was robbed, I just think, be careful what you wish for, you know? Because if she had, we would all be cringing. We would all be cringing that was her win. And it would have stopped her, you know, I don't agree with her Fences win, as I said earlier, but for different reasons. But it would have stopped her then winning for something better in the future, you know?
Yeah.
I feel like her Fences win also did that. But like, yeah, if that's you've got to be so careful about giving people first wins for unnecessary first wins, because it often ruins like the trajectory, you know. So it's a marvel that Emma Stone managed to win a second time for that, which I think is kind of an undeniable performance. But that so easily could have not fallen by the wayside because she unnecessarily won the first time round. And it happens time and time and time again where someone wins and then you're like, oh, hold on, they're doing much better work years later.
Yeah.
We've given her one already, you know. So I'm so pleased that Viola Davis did not win for the Help.
Yeah, I call that the Jodie Foster.
Yes, exactly, 100%. Although luckily, again, with Jodie Foster and Emma Stone, they actually went on to win for their better performances afterwards. But
That's
so often someone wins early and then does so much more interesting work and then never gets a sniff again because they've already got one. So
true, that's true. Okay, well, this was from like 4 different people. This was from Andrew Carden, Ghost of Glenda Miss Jackson, If You Nasty, Existential Rock, and Dan B. They all want to know basically what happens if Viola wins here. Like, what happens with Fences? Does she go lead in that case because she already has one? Does she still win somehow if she's still in supporting? Like, what happens?
Right. Firstly, what happens is if she wins here, And this is exactly what I'm saying about the repercussions going down. Firstly, if she was there, Michelle Williams is an Oscar winner.
Correct.
Michelle Williams was the slam dunk winner of Best Supporting Actress that year, according
I
to
remember.
absolutely everybody, until Viola
Mm-hmm.
Davis swapped categories. So this is what I'm talking about, the repercussions you have when people don't fit in the proper categories. I'm also of the opinion that if Viola Davis had gone lead, she was winning in lead. It was her time. She was winning in lead, and people would go, "Oh,
Mm-hmm.
she wasn't going to beat Emma Stone." La La Land didn't even win Best Picture.
Yeah.
So it wasn't as strong as you think it was. It got 14 nominations, and then like it won a few, but like it was not as strong as you think it was. The narrative for Viola Davis having lost for The Help, followed with being the second black actress to win, followed by it being a clear cut a best actress rather than supporting. Everything about that says that she was winning anyway to me. And so
Yeah.
I think if she had won here, she would have gone lead for Fences because there'd been absolutely no reason not to. And I think she wouldn't have won because she'd already won like a couple of years before.
Yeah.
But if she had gone lead anyway in Fences, I think she was winning. I told her that. She just kind of nodded her.
Yeah, it's fascinating, and I do think like if she didn't win for The Help and she did go lead for Fences, I can picture a very strong narrative of Viola Davis versus Emma Stone, and Viola Davis being the heavyweight
Yeah,
contender
exactly.
for Fences,
Yeah, absolutely.
and being more respected
Yeah.
than what Emma's giving.
Heavyweight contender. Also, with that loss, just coming off that loss,
Yeah.
which kind of weighed heavy on people because it's one of those Meryl's wins is one of those ones that like the minute it happens, people turn against it. Like I'm old enough to
Yeah.
Crash was not the despised film it is until it won Best Picture. If Crash had not won Best Picture, it would not be the despised film it is these days. It was a perfectly well reviewed, perfectly okay picture until it won Best Picture, and everything changed overnight. And I feel that's a bit like what happened with Meryl here. The backlash and that all of that narrative would have been very, very hard for Emma Stone to overcome in a picture that did not win Best Picture. And when you think
Yeah.
it didn't win Best Picture too, so the idea that like it didn't win to Moonlight, one of the strangest films to ever win Best Picture against a frothy light musical, so
Ode to Hollywood.
yeah, exactly. Don't tell me that the Academy, wouldn't have voted for Viola Davis in that circumstance. That's not what was happening there. So yeah, I
Interesting. Yeah.
But basically, the big takeaway is that Michelle Williams would be a best actress, be an Oscar winner if it wasn't for category fraud.
Existential Rock said 2 of The Help's women have won Best Actress and 4 have won Supporting Actress. Which do you think is more likely to happen? Davis wins lead, Stone wins supporting, Chastain wins supporting, Spencer wins lead, or Steenburgen wins lead.
Steenburgen.
So we're talking.
Steenburgen's not winning lead. Octavia Spencer's not winning lead.
I wish. That would be incredible.
Octavia Spencer's not winning lead, is she? Sissy Spacek's as well, isn't she? Is that not mentioned?
That's not mentioned, but yes.
Because I've often thought this, because Sissy Spacek's a really interesting one. She was a huge star, and she's fallen off the radar like none of the others. Her generation, not Sissy Spacek, Diane Keaton, and Lang, etc. Still leading ladies. Sissy Spacek. I'm sure it's by choice a lot of the time, but she just kind of disappeared. She's the exact kind of person who could get a sneaky supporting actress nomination at some point and win.
Yeah.
Emma Stone ain't winning again, is she? Anytime soon.
Probably not.
Viola Davis can absolutely 100% win a Best Actress.
That would be mine.
Jessica Chastain. So they're saying Jessica Chastain in supporting.
Yeah.
That doesn't feel like it's necessarily going to happen. And there's one other I'm missing.
No.
So, Alison Janney in lead. Was that in there?
That was not in there either. But...
I'm such an Oscar nerd that I can pick off. What was the other one? What's the one I'm missing?
I think you got all of them that were listed.
Okay, so my one would be that, and the likelihood of that lot is Viola Davis in lead, because sometimes someone wins supporting. The same happened with Kate Blanchett, where you win a supporting, everyone knows you're a leading lady, and so it feels wrong if you don't have one. And I think that Viola, if she keeps doing good work and she doesn't go back, she's not going to go back to crying in a penny, is she? But if she keeps doing interesting things, then there's a definite best actress win to come.
BJ said, how much of a miracle is it that Rooney got nominated?
This is interesting because when I was looking when I said I was going to do this and I went back to look what happened, it had never occurred to me that she was the one that wasn't supposed to be there. I don't remember that being the narrative. It very, very clearly is, and I'm sure we'll come to it in a minute. But the fifth nominee out of that should have been Tilda Swinton, going by precursors.
Yeah.
I think Tilda
Yeah.
Swinton got nominated everywhere, didn't she? And
Everywhere.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember that. It's clearly true, but I don't remember that the shock on nomination morning of Rooney Mara being nominated. So yeah, going by the statistics, it is a shock, but that's not how I remember it. Clearly I'm misremembering.
I think it was released really late, so maybe it took some time for the industry to catch up to it. And once they did, I think it had a solid pocket of support enough to get the passion in.
Well, I'll say this now. I don't know if we're coming to it in a minute, but like, there's something you realize the more you follow this, which I've now been doing for like 40 years. The big reason that performances don't get nominated, people get up in arms about this and that. This was snubbed and that was snubbed. 9 times out of 10, the reason is just people didn't see the film. Not enough people saw the film. That's the general reason for it. So the girl with the dragon tattoo is a big glossy hit with a A-list director, and We Need to Talk About Kevin is a tiny little film that made £1 million with a British low-key British auteur in it. People didn't see the films. I'm making no comment on the performances given, but giving a better performance doesn't mean anything if people haven't seen it, and I suspect that's just what happened. You have that. We always talk about the screener pile. It's not a screener pile anymore. It's on your computer, whatever. But we all do this. I'm sure there's things you vote on, Indie Spirits I vote on, and when you get that portal, you're not rushing to see like the low beat drama about a school shooting.
Yeah.
When you've got like a comedy there or something light and it's only 90 minutes. That's literally how we all watch it, isn't it? And do you find yourselves like with a week to go or a few days to go, and you've got these really like heavy things that like the Azerbaijani documentary about like slaughterhouses or something, which is a contender, but you just haven't got the bandwidth for. So that's usually what happens, isn't it, when things don't get nominated?
Unfortunately, yes, human nature.
Yeah.
Renee said, given that Rooney Mara was nominated for an Oscar, do you think Noomi Rapace should have been nominated for playing the same role in the earlier adaptation of Girl with the Dragon Tattoo?
So she was at the BAFTAs. It's hard to say because the immediate thing is to say yes, but what year would that have been? In 2009, right?
Eligible in 2010. I looked this up.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
And you were saying what a killer year 2010 is. So that is that's Natalie Portman and Michelle Williams and Lawrence,
Annette Bening,
and
Jennifer Lawrence, Nicole Kidman.
Yeah. I mean, I'd happily kick out Nicole Kidman.
Okay. Well, I wouldn't.
But not because I dislike Nicole Kidman. I remember seeing that film and remembering absolutely nothing about it whatsoever. But I don't think it was like a giant snub or anything. No. As I was saying earlier, a snub is only really a snub if it was expected in the first place. If you've got precursor nominations, I think one BAFTA nomination. I don't think she was really in the conversation, was she? So
no. Eric Anderson said, where does Michelle Williams rank among all actresses, or as many as you want, that have played Marilyn Monroe on film?
No, I looked this up. There's actually an article from somewhere from a couple of years back when Ana de Armas was nominated, and there was like 17 different actresses who'd played Marilyn Monroe. Mm-hmm. I mean, 90% of them I've never heard of. So, and it's not actually playing Marilyn Monroe; it's someone popping up as a extra or something, like pretending to be.
Right.
So, she did as good a job as she can do. I don't know.
Yeah, pretty high by default, I would say.
Exactly. That's the thing, isn't it? Yeah. The only one I can remember seeing, and this was like 20 years ago or more, was that Meryl Sorvino, Ashley Judd thing, and I don't remember anything about them in it, but it was the only other one that I could see, and she's clearly better than Ana de Armas.
Yeah.
Another actress completely humstrung by the material she was given, so.
Very much so. Also, shout out to Megan Hilty from Smash.
Yes, from Smash,
just
of course.
Throw that out there. The true Marilyn.
Yes.
Patrick Walter said Michelle seems unstoppable for a nomination when she goes blonde and breathy, like the Fablemans. But what would it take for her to actually win in lead actress? She's never in contention for a win in any nominated performance. So is she destined to Amy Adams / Glenn Close for eternity?
Possibly, but then you say that about, Jessica Chastain. It's the thing.
Yeah.
This is complete luck. It's like you can do the best performance of your entire life, which is a slam dunk Oscar winner, and then Viola Davis can swap categories. So
Yep.
there's no rhyme or reason to any of this, and you can't extrapolate from one year another year. Different, often sometimes different categories, different films, different years, different nominations. So Michelle Williams' time can absolutely come,
Mm-hmm.
just like, who thought Olivia Colman was going to be an Oscar winner?
Right.
Absolutely nobody. It can, and sometimes it's just like a film can be coming out and then it gets delayed. So a film
Right.
that was definitely, oh, this is going to be a huge Oscar winner. Oh, it's been put back to next year, which then changes the race completely. Sometimes you get a weak year. Sometimes you get an absolutely jam-packed year. Glenn Close, any other year would have signed up with that.
Yep.
But 16 is an absolutely phenomenal year where any one of those would have been great winners. So yeah, Michelle Williams can definitely win. She's got a lot of goodwill. She's very, very liked and admired in the industry. She doesn't have that kind of big starry personality. She's not someone people talk about a lot, is she? She's not someone that we all kind of like. She hasn't got stands like some of the others do. But no, I have no doubt that Michelle Williams can win. She's only like what, 41 or something.
Yeah.
She's got a
Still pretty young.
yeah.
She's got plenty of time.
Long time to still win. So yeah, I don't count that out at all.
Ben Roberts said Williams had quite a moment with this coming straight after Blue Valentine. Would you have nominated her for anything else between this nomination and The Fabelmans?
I looked into this, and the answer was no, because I'd barely seen her in anything else between this and The Fabelmans, which is really bad. But like,
Yeah.
Her best work, I think, is in Fosse Vernon, which I think she's just absolutely sensational in that. And
yeah.
She won all the awards she could for TV. She does a lot of low key films. She does a lot of kind of indie films. She does a lot of films which are going to be on that Indie Spirit portal.
Indie Spirit portal, yeah. That's right.
Need to get down to watching, but there was an Aubrey Plaza drama that Aubrey Plaza comedy, which looked more fun just before I went to bed.
Exactly. So... Yeah, there you go. Yeah, nothing for me either. I mean, she's good in things like, her Kelly Reichardt movies, like Certain Women and Showing Up. But yeah, agreed. Fosse Verdon, I think, is maybe her best performance to date. So yeah. Amanda BW said, this lineup sucks, but these actresses are amazing. Pick one non-nominated performance from each of these actresses' careers to replace this nomination with. Years be damned.
Okay, so I'm going to say for Meryl Streep, the one I would love for her to be a nomination is The River Wild.
Oh,
just think she's great.
I love that pick.
Just think she's great in River Wild, and it's one of those films that every time I see it, I'm like, oh, this is great. It's kind of forgotten. It's a bit schlocky. It's not exactly an action film, but it's like Meryl does action, and it's just she's just so good in it, and I absolutely love that film. Michelle Williams, but I don't have a nomination for her where she should have. I can't think of a film nomination I would give her. Rooney Mara, I wouldn't give her either of hers, and I'm wildly unconcerned about her having any at all. Viola Davis.
Widows for me.
Oh, I really, really disliked Widows. Really disliked it. It's funny because I saw it at TIFF. I saw the premiere at TIFF, and I had 4 friends. We all sat in different places because our tickets weren't near, and we all came out and all said it was terrible. And then all the reviews were absolutely glowing, and it was really like a real kind of disconnect from what we thought we'd just seen. And also, it's a British TV miniseries from the 80s. Which I remember very well, and which I rewatched before I saw the film. And the film just does all these weird things in it that just so distract from what the actual premise of the original film was. So, like, mine, I suppose, would be the Woman King.
The Woman King,
relatively close to, but there's not a lot of obvious snubs from Viola Davis. I think she's been done pretty well Oscar wise compared with her actual filmography. And who am I missing? Is the last one?
Glenn Close.
Oh, Glenn Close. I mean, I feel she's probably quite close with Ursula Fortin.
Yeah, that's mine.
Again, I haven't seen it in such a long time that I can't vouch for it. But she was on like a run there, wasn't she? She was doing
Yeah.
It feels odd that she wasn't nominated. Oh, that's a really strong supporting actress year, 1990. But yeah, it feels like that's the one that's missing that could have been her. Could have been a nomination.
The Meryl for me would be The Hours, personally.
Oh yeah, of course, and you forget she wasn't nominated for that. It feels like such an obvious nomination, doesn't it? Like, I remember that being genuinely shocking when she wasn't
Yeah.
But it was like, you just all. But this is the other reason why people don't get nominated often. It's nothing to do with the performance. It's literally people assumed you were going to, so they don't put you number one.
Right.
Oh,
And then
she's in. We'll put her on. We'll put her number four. I think that
mhm.
happens. That's clearly what happened with Amy Adams for Arrival, isn't it?
It's exactly. Yep.
People were like, "Oh, we love her," but oh yeah, we've got more important things because she's going to get in. So Meryl got lots of threes and fours there and just didn't get enough number one
Mhm.
votes. Is absolutely certain what happened.
Joey Gentili said, recast these 2010s Oscar talents and Karen Black in these roles. Patricia Arquette, Patricia Arquette, Mary J. Blige, Nicole Kidman, Lupita Nyong'o.
Okay, so just make any sense of this whatsoever. We're going to have to go Nicole playing Thatcher.
Okay.
Lupita is playing the girl with the dragon tattoo.
Mm-hmm.
Karen Black is Marilyn Monroe.
I
suppose
guess.
Mary J has to be in The Help, and then what was the last one?
Patricia Arquette and Albert Nobbs.
Yeah, okay,
I guess.
that works as best as we're going to make it work, doesn't it? It's like...
Yeah. I mean, I said Nicole Kidman in My Week with Marilyn, even though they have like very different body types, but like, I don't know, she has that star charisma for me at least.
No, that makes sense. I just, there's no one else to play Thatcher. I mean, who are you going to put in as
Karen Black?
that I would pay to see.
Just like a camp, like satirical version of the Iron Lady. Yep.
Shame Joey didn't write it.
Yeah. Andrew Carden, why do you think Tilda Swinton missed after all those precursor noms?
Oh, interesting. You should ask that question because I think I just answered it tonight.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah, I just don't think enough people saw it. I think it's
and it's dark. Like it's a very hopeless film.
Yeah, it's not just dark and hopeless, but Lynn Ramsey's a very kind of cold director. She doesn't draw you in as an audience, does she? And so what's in it? Even Tilda Swinton who's very good there. You don't feel anything. You don't feel anything, good or bad. It's a distracting film as well with all the flashbacks. It's really like the structure is very alienated, isn't it? It's not a it's not a. So I can see people, even if they did watch it, just coming away being just sort of alienated from the whole thing.
Yeah, and I think she's also very subtle in the film and not particularly showy, so that's not a great combination for.
Are you saying that these performances that got nominated this year aren't subtle? Is that what you're telling me?
Maybe. Jeremy Kaplan said Kirsten Dunst was sensational in Melancholia and won Cannes and National Society of Film Critics, but got snubbed here. Do you think the snub was due more to the film's subject matter or to distaste for Lars von Trier?
Okay, so I've never seen Melancholia, and it was, how I like to go overboard with my watching for this. That was my next film list that I would have got to next, but I ran out of time. But I would say yes to both of those. I mean,
yeah, it's a combination of both. Way too bleak for Academy members, but it is one of her top tier performances and one of the best films about just like depression that I've ever seen. So, bleak subject matter, but worth it for her performance.
Yeah. She's another one. She's gonna, she's had her first nomination recently, but I feel like she was Civil War, wasn't it? Recently. So good. And it was I've never seen her. She felt like a grown up for the first time. It actually felt like an actual. She's in her 40s. She felt like a woman in her 40s, and I say that's a compliment. She actually felt like a real lived in real woman, which is great to see because child stars often don't get that opportunity, and I feel like there's only good things coming from Kirsten Dunst in the next few years.
Levi said, why was Kristen Wiig unable to build momentum for a nomination here for Bridesmaids? The screenplay and supporting actress noms are all-timers, but it always baffles me that she never caught on as a serious contender.
Are we coming to this in a minute, or is this what we talk about who should have got in?
In a minute.
Okay, so I mean, there's a simple answer to that. It's a comedy. That's literally all there is to it.
And it's a broad comedy too.
A broad comedy, 100%. Yeah. So every now and then you get a supporting nomination in a broad comedy. We see like in Maria Bakalova for Borat, or Robert Downey Jr. in Tropic Thunder, Melissa McCarthy, obviously. Every now and then that you can sprinkle in a supporting performance. Very, very, very seldom to say broad. Can't remember when was the last one in lead.
That may have also been why Margot Robbie wasn't nominated for Barbie, because that has flavors of like broad comedy
Yeah,
to it as
absolutely.
well.
I mean, it's not quite the same, but like Johnny Depp in Pirates of the Caribbean was a bit of a
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. But
Hmm.
other than that, they just don't. It's not seen as. It's just interesting also because it's not like it's the whole branch nominated. It's only the acting branch doing the nomination. So you would think they would understand that. But no, it's just somehow comedy is not deemed as serious, as important as crying. If you've got a bubble of snot coming out of your nose, that is far, far more important than shitting in a sink. Um, it's just how
Fair
it goes.
enough. That's how it goes. Josh said, if Berenice Bejo went lead, like at BAFTAs, would she have made this 5 due to the love for the artist? And if so, who is she knocking out?
I mean, I literally, it's the last thing I watched before I came here. Yeah, she's clearly the lead. I mean, she's clearly, it's not even up for question whether she's lead or not. I'm very baffled by, well, not baffled by the Academy putting her in, not in supporting because they did a lot. And I'm not necessarily, I don't know if she was campaigned there or not, but she gets a BAFTA nomination in lead. She wins the César in lead. She's clearly the lead. Um,
Co-lead, yeah.
I think she probably gets in just because of
Maybe.
the
Yeah.
she got in supporting and the film wins picture, director, actor. It would feel odd if she didn't get in. And there's not in that lot. There's not like you can easily see Rooney Mara not getting in. You can easily
Glenn.
just you
Maybe.
can yeah. I'm a bit. I'm not sure about Glenn just because of the narrative, just because it was such a long time, because it was a passion project and that I think people were
Yeah.
voting for her. But yeah, there's definitely a
There's
place for
room.
her. Yeah,
Hmm.
there is room. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if she had gone.
Yeah.
It feels kind of odd that they didn't even try that.
We'll just combine this last question here from Shane Nomara. They said, would you have replaced the seemingly 6th to 10th placers with any of these nominated, which they list as Charlize Theron, Tilda Swinton, Elizabeth Olsen, Kirsten Dunst, and Kristen Wiig? And then Jimmy just said to replace all of these nominees with 5 other eligible performances. So any omissions, snubs you want to talk about here?
Okay, so I would definitely put Kristen Wiig in.
Me
Um,
too.
Happily put Kristen Wiig in. I think she's just great in that film.
Brilliant. Hmm.
But I suppose it's so good, a bit long, does sag in the middle a bit, but like yeah, just really really great. And she's fantastic. I was happily put her in. Tilda Swinton, I'm fussed by. I wouldn't mind her being in there, but I'm not. No, I'm not. I mean,
Yeah.
I would really kick Gling Chose out for all of them basically, but like I'm not going to argue for them. Haven't seen Melancholia. Have seen Elizabeth Olsen, but a long time ago, and it didn't. I don't remember much about it, so I can't say for certain that I would take her out. Who was the one other?
Charlize Theron.
Right, I literally watched that yesterday. I love Charlize Theron. I think her win is one of the all-time great wins. I think she's absolutely sensational in the monster. I love her, the fact that she's like a proper movie star, and we don't have enough of those these days. But she's also a really, really great actress. She's a combination I really love. I think she's slightly miscast in young adult, um, just because it feels like she's needs to be a bit more sort of sad, sacky. And when you look like Charlize Theron, it's very hard to pull that off. She looks like a movie star at all times. You can put her in sweatpants and an unbrushed hair, but like you still look like Charlize Theron. It just doesn't quite sit right with me for the schlumpy, sad, sacky depressionist that she's trying to thing. So I'm happy to leave her out. Now I'm going to say something here which absolutely nobody has ever said in the entire history of mankind, but the person I would put in easily, and I'd kick all of them but Meryl out, is Cameron Diaz for Bad Teacher.
Oh my God. I was like racking my brain of like, who are you going to say? That is not one of the people I thought of. Wow.
I
Okay.
love Cameron Diaz. I think she again, I'd happily give her 4 or 5 nominations. I just think she's absolutely great in this film. I love this film. Again, it's not one of those, I'm not going to argue it's a great film, but I'm just thoroughly entertained by it every time I see it. It just makes me laugh out loud. And comedies very seldom make you laugh out loud. If you can
Yeah.
watch something and agree that it's funny, but it doesn't mean you're actually going to laugh. And I
Hmm.
just think she's just brilliant in it. She's so good at that kind of not sort of she doesn't do sort of slapstick in that, but she's very very good at like the sort of thing that Irene Dunn or Jean Arthur and people used to do back in the day, which is make comedy look really really simple. Make
Right.
she's just Sandra
She's a
Bullock's really
natural.
good as well. She's a natural, yeah. I just think she just thinking about it. I literally watched it last week. Just thinking about that film makes me laugh. I just think
Yep.
she's brilliant in it. I think she's absolutely brilliant in it. So my wild card nomination for Best Actress 2011 is Cameron Diaz in Bad Teacher.
Very
If
good.
only the
If only.
Academy would think outside the box a bit more.
A woman robbed. Yes.
Said absolutely nobody but me.
Yeah. I would do Charlize Theron, Tilda Swinton, Kirsten Dunst, Kristen Wiig, all of those already mentioned. And then I'd throw in probably Layla Hatami for A Separation as well.
Oh, so interesting you say that, because that's literally the film I was watching when I had to leave the house. And
Okay.
when I messaged you earlier to say, could we do it a bit later because it kept sticking? That's the film that I didn't get to finish because it kept sticking. So
Okay.
yeah, I've seen it before many years ago, but I
Yeah.
can't currently put her in my lineup because it's been such a long time since I've seen her.
Fair enough.
But yes, completely.
Yeah.
That would absolutely be. Oh, one other one. I mentioned her quite a bit already for various different things, but that would be Olivia Colman in Tyrannosaur. Which
Oh my God, yes, I forgot. Yeah.
that's this year, right? Sometimes you're not sure which year they fall into. A film I haven't seen in a long time, but that's the film that really changed her from being a British comedy actress. Really, she was very known on TV. But that's the first time I remember seeing her doing drama and being like, oh, she can do anything, and she can do absolutely anything, can't she? As we've now discovered. But that's the one other one that should be in there if
Let's get to our final segment here, where we will reveal who we think was the runner-up to Meryl Streep. Baby Clyde, who do you think it was?
I think it was Viola Davis, but I'm not as sure about that as some other people would potentially say. Wow. Just because the film is not really about her, and it's seldom that an Oscar goes, certainly Best Actress, where the actress isn't like front and center. That doesn't often happen. Every now and then you can think of one, but like, yeah, I think it probably was her, but I actually don't think it was. I don't think it was actually close.
Yeah. So do you think the alternative would be Michelle Williams
as
a possibility?
Maybe just because of the other precursors, because she had been nominated the year before, because she's playing an icon, potentially. I mean, I think it probably was Viola Davis, but again, I don't think the vote tallies were close. I think Meryl won this, at a canter.
Yeah, Violet was clearly the runner-up, I think. She had a lot of narrative momentum, I think, behind her as an alternative to Meryl. But we'll never know the vote totals. Maybe someday we will, and it'll reveal she won by one vote.
Why wouldn't they do that?
I don't know.
It would be such a, maybe like on the 100th anniversary, they could start doing that one a year or something. Although they say they don't exist, don't they, for the first like 50 years or something.
Yeah.
But like, even if it's just for us nerds, most people aren't going to care, are they? But like, I really want to know like the vote tallies for 1941.
Yeah. Or just have it be like a secret room in the Academy Museum, and you can go in and you can never reveal it to anyone in the public.
Maybe you're only allowed to get in if you can name all the best supporting nominees, best supporting actress nominees of the 50s. Yeah, something like that.
So specifically something you can do. Okay, got it.
So you have to get there. You're not gonna know in advance which decade you're gonna get given, but you've got to turn up. But if you can if you can show your expertise, then you're allowed to go in and just look at one. The 1 year all of us are going to go to immediately, I think, is Best Actress 1950, isn't it? That's going to be the and 54. They're the two like how close are they?
Wow.
And yeah, I feel like see, I've solved the problem first. You listen to Academy.
Yes, Academy. If you're listening, take notes.
Yes.
Okay, last question here. Who would you have voted for from this lineup? I already know this answer, but I'm asking you formally here.
I would have voted for Meryl Streep. Not even close.
Well, you joined the club of the Academy. So I would have voted for Rooney Mara because
Really?
Yes.
Oh, I didn't see that coming.
Yeah. I mean, compared to the rest, I just respond to that performance more than the others, and I prefer the film most to the others, and I just think it's one of her best performances in a lineup full of nominees where their best performances are elsewhere. And yeah,
no, that makes sense. It just, to me, it's just such, I just feel it's almost like a wasted win if she won that.
Well, It would have been my vote. So
no narrative is served by it. You know, we would look back and go, oh, really? Not like him. But you know,
I think it would be a cool win. I think it'd be a very unique, cool win. Just
yeah,
saying.
it would be a unique, cool win. I don't think Nimi Rapace would be very happy.
Well, that's fine.
And rightfully so.
Well, on that note, thank you so much, Baby Clyde. Another fabulous, fun adventure through the Oscars with you. Thank you so much.
You're more than welcome. Thank you for having me.
Well, where can people find more of you on the internet?
I'm on Twitter, whatever they call it these days. I refuse. So I'm on Twitter where I don't tweet much anymore because every time you do, you're inundated by bots. I'm on Letterboxd, just Baby Clyde Oscars at Letterboxd, where I try and review every film I've watched, which is many. And I write for the Film Experience, for Nathaniel's Film Experience. Not as much as I should, but you can find me up there. You can find my Oscar adventures up there. It's mostly that old stuff and Oscars I write about. So that's where you can find me if you want to say hello.
Well, thank you all so much for listening. You could find me on all platforms at Kevin_Jacobson. The show's at Oscar Runner Up on Twitter, Instagram at And the Runner Up is. Rate, review, and subscribe if you haven't already. And if you like what you heard, go to patreon.com/And the Runner Up is, where you can hear a bunch of bonus episodes. Next week, we'll be breaking down the Best Actress lineup of 2012, where the nominees were Jessica Chastain in Zero Dark 30, Jennifer Lawrence in Silver Linings Playbook, Emmanuel Riva in Amour, Quvenzhané Wallis in Beasts of the Southern Wild, and Naomi Watts in The Impossible, with the winner being Jennifer Lawrence. So with that, thanks again, Baby Clyde.
Bye.
And I will bid you all adieu.